Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Well, first of all, thank you very much indeed for offering the mic. And particular salams to Hasnain Sahab. I think it's our first
Walaikum salam. Kaisa
interaction.
Saab. Hope you're well.
Yeah, Alhamdulillah. I think it's our first interaction after that lengthy debate we had, and it's so good to be in your company again.
Ji, 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 bilkul.
Right.
Pleasure is mine,
So
sir.
this is
Pleasure is mine. Likewise.
you're very kind, sir. Right on the necessity. Well, there's two things I wanted to say because I think the uh, Captain Ti. I want to clarify one thing, just to put it on record. This is not about being right or being wrong. And I think Dr. Andani mentioned this, and Hasnain Saab mentioned this. I think it's important to put on record that when a claim is made here that this is what we don't accept or this is what we believe, the frame of reference in this case is the intellectual legacy being carried by Dr. Andani, Hasnan Sahab, the intellectual legacy of the philosopher movement or Akhwan al-Sufa, which is not mainstream in Islam. So again, this is not to say that Dr. Andani is wrong by any stretch of imagination or Asnan Saab is, but it's important to contextualize the conversation that this is completely opposite to what the mainstream Islamic conception of this topic is. Now, we had a long discussion on this. What initially it started as a discussion and then organically developed into a full-on debate. That's on YouTube. Should you wish to go and take a look, by all means you can. But what I wanted to say as a second point is that, you know, the discussion that we are having here, it's more of an sort of an intra-Islamic introspection, looking at the different angles and views. And this is not my field. So that's why I like to stick to where I'm more comfortable in. That is the inter-ism discussion. So Islam versus something else, i.e., atheism or agnosticism and so forth. So what do we mean by the necessary existence when we have those conversations? And Dr. Anzani touched upon this very briefly. I'd like to build upon his argument that the something for which it is not possible not to exist, and that is not the matter of a simple claim, which I think our friend asked earlier. That I mean, it doesn't sound simple anymore. Well, let's entertain the idea without any going into uh, the evidences or anything of that sort to prove it or disprove it. Let's assume that that necessary existence is there. Once we have reached that conclusion, then the question of simplicity is no longer valid because everything becomes simple for that necessary existence. So we don't think that, oh, that sounds simple, because simple would imply that there is something which is complicated. And if there is necessary existence, then the concept of simplification is as irrelevant as complication because everything is just simple. But the question is it possible that we conclude that it is not possible for something not to exist? So that is relevant to us. So the question of simplicity is confined within our logic, not within the necessary existence of that being, that transcendent being. So is it simple? Yes, it is. Because if we don't have this simplicity, we have host of problems to deal with. For example, we have the problem of infinite regress. For example, we have the problem of which contingency supporting which contingency. And within that, we have the discussion of causation. Then we go on to the vertical causation, and then we go to the horizontal causation, and then we go to the simultaneous causations from the multiple angles, that is the vertical and horizontal. That does not take us anywhere at all. So, logically speaking, we can only arrive at one destination, and that is there has to be a prime cause, an uncaused cause, a necessary existence that explains everything because without that existence, nothing makes sense, like none whatsoever. So that is more of a discussion, as I mentioned earlier, about the intra-isms. So when I, as a Muslim, or Asnan Sahib as a Muslim, talks to a non-Muslim, then probably we will go to those rails. That's my guesstimation. Probably Asnan Sahib has a different route. But based on my debating and discussion career where merges philosophy and science and philosophy of science, all three disciplines, is on the line, the summary of which I've just explained. Beyond that, what do we mean by the necessary existence within the intra Islamic tradition? Well, we've had people like Ghazali who had a much different approach and represented the mainstream. And we had people like Ibn Sina who had much different conception of it. And they all had different ideas about it. It went on one side so intense that Ghazali ended up doing takfir on Ibn Sina. But there are the amount of respect that Ghazali had for Ibn Sina on the other side that some historians actually believe. And what I'm about to say is going to cause a lot of controversy among my Ashari friends. That is that Ghazali at some point deserted his Ashari position of occasionalism, and he did so by learning from Ibn Sina and his work. And he became convinced that, well, occasionalism is no longer tenable so far as. But again, this is a contentious topic. I don't know whether he actually did or he didn't. But Griffel, Mamura, a number of other historians, they have a difference about it. But if it is true that the point I'm making is that on one side, Ghazali went on this topic, he went as far as uttering takfir, which is one of the worst things that a Muslim can do to another Muslim. But on the other hand, he learned so much from him that possibly he deserted one of the core tenets of Ashaira. This is where I probably should stop talking because beyond this will drag me back into the intra Muslim introspection, which is in my field. So I do thank you for your time. Thank you.
Jazakallah Qaisar Saab, for sharing your thoughts, for this enlightening, exchange of, uh, uh, your reflections, for sharing them. Thank you.
I mean, hi, Kaisar. Thank you for that and for acknowledging everyone in the discussion. Without getting into the details, because I know you don't want to discuss all the weeds, but when you say it's not mainstream, right? Like, what exactly do we mean? Because I agree that not everything in Ibn Sina's system is became mainstream, but I feel a lot of it did in different ways. So the bulk of Avicenna Ibn Sina's ideas really did continue in the Shi'i intellectual tradition and it continues to this day, right? In Iran and elsewhere. But apart from that, I have found that the the basic argument of Ibn Sina of God as wajib al wujud, as well as the argument like the proof of God as wajib al wujud, as well as some of the ideas of Ibn Sina on the unity of the divine attributes, I have found that this actually did become mainstream in post-classical, post-Ghazali Sunni tradition. Uh, there are so many commentaries written on Ibn Sina as well as other works by people like E.G. and Giorgiani and Dawani and Dashtaki and all this. I mean, there's such a long commentary tradition to the point where there are many important post-classical Ashari and Maturidi verifiers, as they call themselves, right, muhakkikun, who, for example, affirm that the sifat, the divine attributes, are identical to the divine essence, including a major Maturidi muhakkik of Al Azhar in the 20th century, whose text I have, for example, including, and I'm sure, I don't know I don't know your views on this, but like Hazrat Ahmed Riza Khan, like he believed in the identity of the attributes and the essence. These are just some examples I'm throwing out there. So I feel that certain ideas that we hold, that we talked about, and by we I mean we, the Islamic philosophers, or whatever you want to call us, I feel that certain of our ideas did become mainstream. I acknowledge that other ones did not. So for example, eternal creation, I acknowledge that for most of the Sunni tradition, they don't believe in that. That's fine, you know But I don't think that the concepts that we're talking about on the space, the simplicity of God and all these other things, like I don't think it's as non-mainstream as people think.
Yeah, you're right, and I agree with that. I probably should have clarified it more, but I thought we were talking about the nature of the existence of universe, not the necessary existence of God Himself. So my comments about Ibn Sina's views not being mainstream are about the distinction between the causal creation or the temporal creation of it. Generally speaking, as you alluded to towards the end of your talk, that the mainstream Muslims, I mean, the normal view is that God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is eternal, nothing else is eternal, nothing else could be eternal or co eternal, which is one of the implications that one could derive from the Abyssinian views that if it is not temporally created, but it is, it is still caused, well, it becomes meaningless to many Muslims, including myself, that if things are caused, then the cause has to precede the effect. And from if the universe is caused to have come into existence, then what was the state from which it was caused? Well, that has to be non-existence, because even the law of identity would tell us that you cannot have something and not that thing at the same time. So this is where the mainstream Islam is, and this the point is not. I mean, it isn't something which is to me worthy of debate, because we had a long debate on this. Okay, I do thank Hasnain Sahib for being very patient with me, but it's still not a convincing argument so far as I'm concerned. And the mainstream, the main bulk of the ummah, that this is the case, and this is one of the reasons, because Ali did takfir on Ibn Sina, because he denied the temporal creation of the universe. But again, I respect the opinions, and so far as other thing is concerned, that Ibn Sina is mainstream in many other aspects. Surely that is the case. Is mainstream in my thought when I talk to the atheists, and particularly when we talk about the contingency argument. I heavily rely on Ibn Sina, so by no means am I saying that he's completely fringe on all aspects. That certainly is not the case. But on this one particular area, that is the distinction between the temporal and the causal creation of the universe. That distinction itself is not mainstream.
I think Sayyid Hasnain maybe has to say something or maybe respond.
Uh, I don't know. I mean, like me and Qaisar Sahib had such a heated discussion. I mean, by heated, I mean a very interesting intellectual conversation. Even during the course of this session, I've touched upon the same question. Okay, that what is the malaki ihtiyaj, the criterion on the basis of which an effect depends upon another, i.e., its cause. Is it temporal origination, that is hudus, okay, or is it something else, okay? Now, for the theologians, that is mutakallimun, such as Ghazali and many others, okay, Taftazani and Razi and all that. The malak ihtiyaj is hudus, okay? And by hudus over here, since the philosophers distinguish between hudus zati and hudus zamani, so by hudus over here we mean masbuq bil adam, okay, that is that which is posterior to non-existence. Now, the whole problem over here is that the entire nature of the divine itself, becomes problematic, for the philosophers, because as I just explained, that God being absolutely simple, and Khalil is right. I mean, like there is a whole list of Sunni scholars and Sunni mutakallimun and even philosophers that have believed in divine simplicity or have adhered to it. And even Qaisar Saab is right, okay, in saying that Ghazali may have, towards the end of his life, when he became inclined towards, Islamic mysticism, that is tasawwuf, and he authored works such as the Mishkatul Anwar. Okay, so if you read the Mishkatul Anwar, so you would see that it is replete with Avicennan ideas, and if you read the Mishkat, okay, you would come to realize that the Ghazali of the Mishkatul Anwar does not seem very averse to the idea of eternal creation. Okay, so the problem is that if God is absolutely simple, and even Sunni thinkers like Ibn Arabi, Sadruddin Qanavi, Dawood Qaisari, Abdul Karim Jilli, Abdul Rahman Jami, Azizuddin Nasafi, okay, and many other thinkers like Sharif Jurjani,
Abdul Wahab Sha'rani.
Exactly, yeah, and
in the subcontinental tradition,
well, we have this
Muhibbuddin
guy,
Bihari.
Al-Mutai is
Yes,
a 20th
yeah.
century Maturidi verifier. Al-Mutai, Al-Azhar,
Yes,
Sheikh of Al-Azhar.
yeah,
He believes in divine.
yeah.
He actually says the verified view among Ahl Sunnah is in agreement with the Falasifa and the Mutazila that the attributes
Absolutely.
are identical to the essence
That
in
is-
reality.
Actually,
and
I want to say something.
Tilmisani,
So this
Nablusi,
claim.
Tilmisani. Wait a second, Elias. Let me complete this thought that I have. So there is Afifuddin Tilmisani. There is Nablusi. Okay, so there is an entire list of Sunni, thinkers, both mystics and theologians who have believed in divine simplicity. Okay, divine simplicity being the doctrine that the existence of God is identical to his essence, and all his existential attributes are identical to his existence, and are also identical to one another. Okay, so if you have an entity that is such, that is absolutely simple, and only possesses a single ontological aspect within its essence, and we also know that this entity, okay, is essentially necessary in itself with respect to existence, right? So that aspect of existence, therefore, it cannot have any other aspect. The aspect of agency must necessarily be identical under the divine simplicity model to the aspect of existence. Now, the problem here is that God is essentially necessary with respect to existence. Okay, and since the aspect or any other ontological aspect, okay, of any other attribute of perfection is identical to the aspect of existence, okay, given divine simplicity, so he has to be essentially necessary with respect to agency as well. That is the Jahat Fa'iliyah. Okay, so I mean, what this basically means is that the procession of his act from his essence, okay, that he's necessary in itself with respect to the procession of his act from his essence. Therefore, the first effect, call it whatever you want to call it, makhluq awwal, sadr awwal, okay, the first intellect, al-aql al-awwal, okay, it cannot be temporally originated. Because if it were temporally originated, so its existence would be preceded by non-existence, because that is what being hadis mean, masbuq bil adam, being posterior to non-existence. Okay, so you would need to account for this non-existence. Okay, because you see, everything apart from God being contingent, so its quiddity, the first effect's quiddity, it is contingent in itself. And it is therefore in itself neither existent nor non-existent, being equidistant in relation to both existence and non-existence. So the cause of its existence, there has to be a cause for its existence, which is the existence of its perfect cause. And there also has to be a cause or an account for its non-existence, which is the non-existence of its perfect or complete cause. But the problem over here is that if the first effect were first non-existent, being incipient in nature, okay, so it had to be non-existent due to the non-existence of its perfect or complete cause. But its perfect or complete cause, okay, there is no other thing prior to the first effect, the first intellect, apart from God. And he cannot fail to exist, since he is the very reality of existence itself. And the reality of existence cannot be identical to its contradictory opposite, that is non-existence. So he exists pre-eternally, right? Okay, so and then on top of that, to affirm that someone as august and sublime as the divine reality is an agent by intention, or fa'il bil qasd. That is to say that he has the ability to act otherwise. Okay, so that it means that it is possible for him to either choose to act or to refrain from existentiating a certain act. Okay, so what is the subject of this possibility? It is either the divine essence or it is not the divine essence. If it is not the divine essence, then God is not, he does not have the ability to act otherwise. And if it is the divine essence, then he becomes essentially possible or contingent, because remember, he is absolutely simple. So the aspect of possibility is the only thing that remains. Ji ka saza.
I just want to add, बोलना है कैसे?
Yeah, thank you. Look, I really admire the way this whole movement thinks, and it does create a lot of doors and a lot of new avenues for inquiry. But then, one of the settled principles in the philosophy is that if you have a thought value of a particular, or if you have the value of a thought, and if you want to measure its authenticity, just apply that value on that very thought and see if it holds merit. If it does, then yeah, you might be onto something. But if it doesn't, then obviously the whole thing crumbles then and there. So using that and applying that on our discussion, if we are to hold that if the universe was not created, that is in temporal sense we are talking about, then the God's ability to create is not manifested anywhere. So for God's ability to create, or his characteristic of being a creator, can only manifest if something is created. Well, that's a deeply problematic statement, because being a creator is not the only characteristic of God. I mean, there are a number of other things that God does. For example, God will decide at some point who will go into heaven, who will go into hell, and he will be the chief regulator of the day of judgment, and so forth. Now, I understand there's a philosophical understanding that may well have happened already beyond time and space. But relative to us, that hasn't happened yet. So that's side of mercy of God, and we do say that God is merciful and he is the decider of who will go to the heavens and hell and so forth. But the fact that that has not happened to us yet, are we to say that God does not have that characteristic? You see, this is where this argument fails, that the manifestation of his characteristic is required, because the moment we say required, we are all of a sudden placing God under our logic, whereas we are talking about the Islamic conception of God, and in Quran it's very clear that there is nothing like him, that we are trying to find other things that are not God, and all of them are contingent. And it's very true that for a painter to be a painter, he needs to paint something. I agree with that. But that painter is a contingent being, a limited being. I cannot use that example to say that because a painter has to paint to be able to become a painter, therefore God has to create something to be able to become a creator. What we are saying is that we are limiting God within our logic. But in any way, like I said, the arguments will go on and on and on. You mentioned a number of people from the Orthodox Sunni tradition who actually believed in
It's
this.
okay, Qaisar Saab. It's okay. No problem. You can lay down your objections. The thing is that the way I feel, you haven't really addressed my objection. My what I explained was that if we are to affirm that God has the ability, that He is an agent by intention, and therefore is able to act otherwise, that is, fail with tarki fail, is to be affirmed in relation to the divine, then that basically implies the existence of an aspect of essential possibility within the essence itself. So how do we address this problem? And then there is the other objection of providing an account for the non-existence of the first effect. Now, what you're referring to applies to the material, the sublunary world, the sensible realm. It does not apply to the metaphysical contingent entities that are atemporal, that are immaterial, such as the immaterial longitudinal intellects and the latitudinal immaterial intellects. Okay, that are not temporal or spatiotemporal. Okay, so it doesn't hold true for them. Okay, so the thing is that you need to basically address the objection concerning the nature of the divine itself, because affirming that the divine was an agent or is an agent by intention basically implies the existence of an aspect of possibility within the essence, and you need to account for the non-existence of the first effect. Okay, that what accounts for its non-existence. Okay, given the fact that the divine cannot fail to exist. So how would you address? I mean, if you like to engage in this, otherwise it's okay, no problem. I mean, we can just finish it over here. But if you like to engage, I would really like to hear to your response as to what you said regarding the Quran. So Alhamdulillah, we're all believers in the Quran. Okay, it is even the last time we discussed, I think I did clarify that the dispute, the contention over here is not on the validity or the authoritativeness, the hujjiyah of the Islamic scripture, that is the Quran. Okay, the Quran is hujjah for all of us. The contention, the disagreement, okay, is regarding the interpretation of the revelation. Okay, now for the philosophers, okay, the revelation, the revealed truth and rational truth cannot be inconsistent or contradictory to one another. Okay, so if you have a burhan, a rational demonstration, okay, on a particular notion, okay, then we can be rest assured that no verse within the Quran, okay, would contradict in essence, okay, would contradict this demonstration. Okay, but I mean, since we're discussing demonstrated proofs and philosophy, and we're not talking about scripture. Okay, otherwise this space would become just like any other space where we're just exchanging Quranic ayats and having disagreements over. Yeah, exactly. So the thing is, over here we're basically discussing the core demonstrated proofs, the barahin, that were laid down by the philosophers. Okay. And they worked hard for constructing all these proofs. Okay, so yes, I mean, I would be extremely glad if you can address the objections, and those objections are simply meant to explain to you, okay, how the philosophers perceive or view this entire problem, and why for them, it is problematic to affirm that God is an agent by intention, or God, has the ability to act otherwise.
Well, I have no problem with that at all. What I'm saying is that we have devised a very particular logic borrowed from the Greek thought, and we are trying to understand God within the Aristotelian framework, and that is what I have problem with. And I'm not the only one who has problem with it. I mean, if you think people like Al-Kindi, for example, who many regard as the father of Arabic philosophy, he disagreed with both Farabi and Ibn Sina, because to him, he actually came up with a brilliant question which probably addresses a lot of problems that we're discussing here. It's not the express question. He implied within his discussions that is it possible for something other than God to be infinite? Now, this is a very simple yes or no question. If the answer is yes, well, that means that now we are literally talking about universe being co-eternal because the conversation is contextualized within the creation of universe. So if the universe is also infinite, just like God is, so now we are saying that the God is no longer la sharik because we have put a co-eternal there. And the God if God is the only being that is not limited, is not finite, that means everything else that exists, it has to come, it has to be understood as not co-eternal. Another very important and interesting thing from both Razis, Abu Bakr and Fakhruddin, the combination of their understanding, I'm simplifying here, that the universe has to exist in time. If we say that the time itself is co-eternal, then we would be saying that either God is inside time, or the time also. That in any case, we won't be able to say that the time began to exist. But that simply is not the case, because if the time did not begin to exist, then the time has the necessary existence because it doesn't depend on anything. And this was a serious problem for people like Ibn Sina and Farabi, which is the reason they created this somewhat artificial distinction between the temporal and causal. Because if the causation is there, that causation must have materialized temporally. It cannot be beyond time. It cannot be
Why?
beyond space.
Why?
Well, because why not? I mean, because
Because let me
since
explain why not. Let me explain. I mean, even though I asked this question, but now that you've asked me, okay, without actually addressing mine, but it's okay, no
I'm
problem.
happy to
I'll
do so,
address
by the
yours.
way, should you wish.
Sorry?
Okay, okay, you go ahead first, and I'll answer your question.
Okay, okay. It's because a cause, okay, that does not necessitate its effect, okay, is merely an incomplete and an imperfect cause, and is therefore dependent, okay, for its conjunction with that which would, the conjunction with which would allow it to necessitate the existence of its effect. Because you see, it goes back to the principle of preponderance, the imtina tarjih bila murajjih, which is also adhered to by the mutakallimun. Okay, you see, if there is a contingent querity, right, and if it is non-existent, so since the contingent querity fi nafsihi is devoid of both non-existence and existence, and it is in itself neither existent nor non-existent, so you need to account both for its existence and non-existence, because both these are accidental in relation to the contingent querity, which in itself is nothing qua itself. Okay, so if it were non-existent, so there has to be an account for non-existence. Okay, now the account for non-existence could not be anything other than the non-existence of its cause. Okay, so that is the reason why we are saying that if there is a cause, okay, and its effect does not follow as a necessary consequence of its existence, so it means that this cause was not a necessitating cause. It is not an illat mawajjiba. It is merely an illat naqisa. Okay, you only think it is the cause. Okay, and it is therefore dependent for its conjunction, okay, with something other than itself, so that it could then become a necessitating cause. And it is precisely, and this implies dependence. But God is absolutely self-sufficient in all respects. He is Ghani min Jami'ul Jihad. That which is Ghani min Jami'ul Jihad cannot be dependent upon another for the necessitation of its effect. Regarding time, the objection is self-defeating. Why? Because time never had a beginning. Because you see, it is preposterous to posit that time itself is temporally originated. Because you see, what does it mean to say that a thing is temporally originated, that a thing is hadith? Okay, it means that the existence of a thing is preceded by temporal non-existence. Masbuq bil admi zamani. Okay, why masbuq bil admi zamani? Because I've just explained, I've already laid out before that the existence of a thing is preceded by non-existence, and there has to be a criterion, a benchmark, that establishes the priority of the non-existence of a thing in relation to its existence. And this benchmark is time. Okay, so if time were to be incipient, that basically implies that there was a time before time, but a thing cannot precede itself or be prior to its own essence. Okay, a thing cannot have taqaddum over its own self. It's impossible. Okay, hence there can be no time before time. Hence time is eternal. But as I was explaining earlier, the time itself being a measure of motion, in the eternity of time implies the eternity of motion and the eternity of the mobile. That is matter. Okay, so basically, what I'm trying to lay out over here are a host of objections that have not really been addressed. Okay, I mean, when you say the arguments that you're bringing forth, okay, are already presupposing something that has not yet been demonstrated, and that has been proven to be false by the demonstrations of the philosophers, as I'm just proving to you right now. Okay. Right, and it is, you see, to be created. If I may, if I may, and then just to be brief, yeah, no problem, sir, no problem. To be, when we were just discussing earlier about the criterion on the basis of which a thing is said to be dependent upon another for the establishment of its existence, that is the malak-e-ihtiyaj. So we discussed that for the mutakallimun and for you as well, and for many others, and this is not a problem. I mean, it's not that if you believe that, you know, the cosmos was temporally originated, so na'uzubillah, you become an apostate or an infidel. No, obviously not. The vast majority, you're absolutely right in asserting that the vast majority of Muslims do believe the cosmos to be temporally originated. It is only a minority that believes in the opposite doctrine. So it is not problematic at all. But when we're talking about being rationally and coherent and correct, so obviously these objections would need to be addressed. Now, the thing is that the malak-e-ihtiyaj, if you say it is hudus, and by hudus you mean masbuqiya bil adam. So once the existence of a thing has been established, does it continue to remain dependent upon God or not? Now, there are only two possibilities. The thing either continues to remain dependent upon God or it doesn't. If you say it doesn't, then what you're basically saying is that the contingent has become necessary. And this implies a plurality of necessary beings, problematic. Okay? If you say it continues to remain dependent, so the problem over here is that the criterion of the dependence of an existential affair cannot be a non-existential matter. That is, the criterion of the ihtiyaj of a amr wujudi cannot be an amr adami. And hudus has already ceased. It already occurred. Now there is no hudus. So how can the criterion, how can an amr adami be the criterion for the dependence of an effect upon another? Okay, that is the criterion for the dependence of an amr wujudi upon another. It is not possible, sir. You would need to, reason cannot accept. It is abominable for reason to accept that the criterion can be hudus, because it leads to either one of these, problems. Which one would you choose? A plurality of necessary beings, or you see, are you getting my point? Or the other problem, where an amr wujudi, an existential affair, the criterion of its dependence upon an effect, upon its cause, is an amr adami. It's not possible. You see, for the philosophers, being created does not mean being temporally originated. For the philosophers, now you said, can there be another infinite apart from God? Now the answer to that is no, it cannot, because for the philosophers, okay, being infinite is synonymous or identical to being essentially necessary. And no being is essentially necessary apart from the first truth, al-haqq al-awwal. So there is no other infinite apart from God. Okay, everything else is dependent upon God. You see, eternity does not preclude dependence, does not preclude contingency. Being eternal does not necessarily imply being essentially necessary. Okay, that is a problem over here. Okay, being co-eternal would be a problem if the other eternal is being affirmed as being eternal in itself. So you're not distinguishing over here between qadim bizatihi and qadim bighayrihi. So the philosophers never say that the cosmos is qadim bizatihi. They say that the cosmos is qadim bighayrihi. That is, it is eternal, but eternal through another. That is by virtue of the eternity of the divine, not by itself. And it is perpetually dependent upon the divine in all respects. So there is no problem of creator and created. The distinction between the creator and created is preserved by the affirmation of contingency, essential contingency, and perpetual dependence of the contingent beings, the eternal contingent beings, upon the divine. I hope I'm being able to make myself clear. If you still have problems, it's okay. You can ask these questions. You can share them with me, and we'll discuss them.
Sure, Hasnain Sahab, one of the reasons I disagree with each and everything you said is because you made it very clear. And I do thank you. I mean, I like these type of conversations where there isn't much of ambiguities. You see, a couple of interesting things in your conversation, and I think that probably speaks to the epistemological weakness of the whole scheme of this argumentation, which is this is possible and this is not possible. We are talking about God. We are talking about the God that is responsible for everything, and everything is explained by God. What we are doing is, in a rather arbitrary way, create certain rules of logic. And this is where I disagree with the Avicennian thought that taking the Aristotelian logic and then trying to fit God into that and see, and before doing that, even determining what is possible and what is not possible, and then trying to fit that God within that and say, well, because this is possible according to my guesstimations and my conception of how I see or the interpretation of reality, and this is impossible. So why not? The two options that I have is either I concede that, look, I don't understand this, and I would rather go with the common sense and say, okay, God, that is the supreme being. Everything else is dependent on God, and that is supported by our human experience and observation. That is, the universe has to exist within time, and that time has to be created by God. Time itself cannot be co-eternal. That's much simpler way of understanding it. The alternative, on the other hand, is that, well, I have got my logic, and I have to explain everything through this logic. And maybe one way to get out of this is to create a distinction between the causal creation and the temporal creation, and say, okay, well, the universe is caused, but it was not temporally created. Well, it is caused. I mean, if you just stop there for a second and ponder, it was caused from what condition? If it is not ex nihilo, then we have some serious problems to run in, because now we are talking about many of the things that even preceded the universe. And if they did precede the universe, then the question is, well, when those things were there, where was the universe? And the answer cannot be it was not there, because so far as you're concerned, temporally speaking, it coexists with God. So now we have bigger problems to deal with. So if the other option, that the universe was created ex nihilo, well, if it is created ex nihilo, it literally means that there was nothing in there. So we have these rules that defy the conception of God. nature of divine as we are told. Clearly, whilst I do agree with that, we don't want to exchange the verses of Quran, but obviously we cannot negate the Islamic thought when we are talking about God. I mean, if we were talking about Mac operating system or the Windows, probably we would be talking about many things, but not Islamic thought. But the fact that we are talking about God and the Islamic conception of it, we cannot discard what Islam tells us. And what Islam tells us is very, very clear. I would rather, when it comes to these discussions, I would rather listen to sermons of Hazrat Ali bin Abi Talib, for example, who is very clear about the temporal existence of the universe and supported with logic. Particularly the Sermon 184 is so helpful because that straightens our what our thought is informed by. That when you try to limit God to your own examples, these are not the literal words, these are the meaning of it, then you haven't understood. You haven't done the qasd, basically, towards God. Because what you're doing is you're creating your own examples and trying to fit God into that. Whereas it's very clear that God, that is the supreme being, and there is no misal of God. I don't simply understand why does it have to be the Aristotelian logic so precious that we are prepared to compromise the established Islamic principles. I mean, so far as I'm concerned, when it comes to Islamic intellectual history, I mean, I don't place anyone close to Ali bin Abi Talib. I don't. You know, this I owe to my father. The way he explained Ali bin Abi Talib to me is simply, I don't see any person when it comes to deciphering and decoding these complex intellectual matters. I don't see any person like him. So I would just read the man and say, well, okay, well, this is what makes more sense. This is perfectly consistent with our Islamic conception of everything that we say. But then we have, which quite rightly you pointed out, that a minority, a fringe opinion. And I respect that because it does give us a lot to think about. So it's not to say that, oh, that has to be complete garbage and we are just going to throw it away. We can find out new ways of inquiry and thoughts that emanate from that. I respect its existence. Like I said, despite all of my, or not all of, most of my disagreements with Avicenna, I still learn from man enough that I debate with atheists using a lot of his material. I have no problem with those things. And that is the whole point I was making, that you are perfectly okay to think like that. That itself is not a problem. But it was important to register that this view itself is a view of minority. It's a fringe opinion, and it's okay to have that. But obviously, I would ask you, like you can ask me, to go beyond. If I can put it in a light-hearted way and then conclude, Hasnan Saab, that you have this solid fortitude of arguments, and that gives you a lot of comfort to talk from. But then the downside is that it is so firm that nothing can penetrate through from outside to, to maybe shake you a bit and say, well, there are other things as well. So I'd ask you to come out of it. Take me with you as well, by the way. Maybe I end up, on your side. Who knows?
If I may, if I may be allowed to just
Yes, yes,
respond,
yes, please, please.
on a few points. First of all, Qaisar Sahab, I agree that this is a minority opinion. I think there is no problem in affirming this and in corroborating you when you say that these notions, these doctrines, are not held by the vast majority. I agree with that. But the complexity or the intricacy of a notion does not necessarily imply or is not evidence of its invalidity. Okay, the Einstein's special theory of relativity, okay, the general theory of relativity, and a host of other Mullah Sadra's, doctrine of the primacy of being, his doctrine of the substantial motion, Harakat al-Jawhriya. All these doctrines and notions are extremely complicated and intricate, okay, and are based upon very intricate and sophisticated demonstrated proofs and arguments. But that doesn't necessarily render them invalid, okay? That is the first. The second thing is that the entire discussion from your part is basically based upon a certain, non-discursive, non-rational understanding or interpretation of the religious text or the scripture. Okay, and even the conception of the divine that you're holding on to. Okay. And that you're saying, I mean, you were saying that, whatever I'm saying, whatever arguments, whatever theories or notions that I'm laying out, they somehow contradict the scripture. So, no, sir. I mean, like, with all due respect, they don't contradict the scripture. They contradict a certain understanding and interpretation of the scripture that is non-discursive, that is non-rational. Now, how do we determine which interpretation? Now, you have an interpretation, okay, and I have an interpretation of the same text. How do we determine that which of these two interpretations is valid? What is going to adjudicate or pontificate, okay, between our respective interpretations, okay, regarding their veracity, regarding their validity? So, sir, it is nothing but reason. Okay, it is only through the axiomatic primary truths, the self-evident principles or truths that as a law or the principle of non-contradiction, the asl imtinai ijtimai naqizain and the asl imtinai irtifai naqizain, the law of excluded middle, and the these self-evident primary axiomatic truths, okay, that we can determine whether the arguments are true or valid. I mean, my arguments, you need to bring up arguments that have the force to counter them rationally. I mean, you cannot just invoke the scripture and say that my understanding or my arguments are invalid or do not work because they are contrary to your specific understanding of the scripture that you have imposed upon it. Okay, because I can just, simply say that no, my arguments are rational. You don't have a rational counter to them. So I'm open to a rational objection. Okay, now the objections that you came up with, I've already explained the problems with those objections and how those objections are self-defeating, how they fall upon themselves, okay, and how they create problems in the conception of the divine that you espouse to, that you are holding on to, okay, and why is that problematic? Okay, so that is an effort on my part. It is, yeah.
Understand that. But you see, the reason it's problematic is because if, as I mentioned quite a few times, and now we are dealing with two things, that is the rational arguments and the arguments from scripture or the sacred personalities. I think it's important to invoke them both because at the end of the day, the topic itself is religious. It is not pure rational exercise. It is not chess that we are playing. And if we are talking about something and trying to find the ontological position of being, then that ontological position must be informed by epistemology itself, and that epistemology cannot be rooted just in Avicenna or other people. And that's also another reason that I will take a different view from that of yours, that these rational arguments are axiomatic. If that were the case, that even all philosopher people, they would agree on these points. But I mentioned earlier, Al-Kindi was, and a number of other people they weren't. Even they had that disagreement, and that's one of the problems with the reason.
No, I didn't say that.
Mm-hmm.
No,
that would be
I was
self-evident.
No. Let me. I'll just repeat, and then you may continue. No, I wasn't saying that that these rational demonstrations are axiomatic, self-evident truths. No, I mean they are barahin, they are burhan. So it means they're not self-evident. I was saying that these demonstrations, okay, are based upon axiomatic truths such as the asle imtina ijtimai naqizan, the asle imtina irtifai naqizan, and other axiomatic truths. Okay,
Yeah, but they're not. That's the
and
problem. You see, because
that is,
I'm sorry.
sir, that remains to be demonstrated by you. You need to demonstrate, you need to provide arguments to clarify and to prove that these arguments do not work, that there is an inherent or an innate inconsistency or a rational problem with the arguments. That is a problem. That is what I'm asking for. I
Well, I
mean,
did
I'm
it
all
for
for, yeah,
I did it for
no,
more
but
than 2 hours the other day, and I also tried it today, and
and I
I'll do it
countered
once
them.
more. Let
No
us
problem. You can.
let's do it one at a time then, and let's see if that takes us anywhere.
Yeah, I think
You
it would be
Sure.
useful if we are just a minute. I think it would
And
be useful if we are able to engage with one particular objection,
yeah.
and both of us speak about that,
Hmm.
and then we analyze that particular objection.
Yeah.
So so if you speak, you can speak this time, and then once you're done,
Yeah.
I think we can come to the objection of what is malaki ihtiyaj
Yeah.
ba'da hudus zamani.
Okay.
This is a very fundamental
Fair point.
objection that the philosopher have. Hassan, do you agree with this proposition? If
Yeah,
we
no
discuss
problem.
that
No
particular
problem.
objection that you just raised of
We can start with
malaki
any
ihtiyaj
objection.
ba'da.
Okay,
Okay,
we can
yeah,
start with any
okay, great.
objection. I mean,
Yeah, we can start
I
with this one.
okay. Well, I object to the assertion, and because we both have alluded to the laws of logic. I mentioned the law of identity. You mentioned the law of non-contradiction. So, since we both believe that to be a middle ground that we can use, so I hold that it is wrong to assert that the universe had causally existed or causally. I mean, it's wrong to assert that the universe was temporally not existed, but causally existed because it means that it existed and not existed at the same time, and that violates the law of non contradiction. That's my take.
Right.
I think
Okay. So
it's, yeah, I think there is a misconception involved over here. Uh, the question doesn't arise in the first place. Why? Because the being in question, the series of existence in question, is an atemporal series. And why is it atemporal? Okay. It is because of the nature of the divine, as I just outlined, that he's essentially necessary, there being a single ontological aspect, the aspect of existence being identical to the aspect of agency. Okay. Therefore, he acts by the necessity of his nature, and hence the consequence of his essence is a necessary entailment of his being. And since his being is pre-eternal, the necessary entailment, the necessary consequence also happens to be temporally eternal. Okay? So this first effect is not temporal. Why would it be temporal? Because it is an immaterial intellect. Nothing material can proceed forth in a proximate manner from the absolutely simple divine being, because the procession of something material, okay, that is the procession of prime matter, okay, would imply the procession of substantial form as well, because prime matter is nothing concrete in reality. Being pure potentiality is dependent for its concrete realization in the experimental reality upon substantial form. And hence, that would imply the existence of a plurality of aspects within the divine essence. So this, and nor can it be an accident, because an accident inheres within a subject, a mawdu, okay, so that will once again entail plurality.
Can I interject here?
So it cannot be a, if I can just complete.
All right.
So
Okay.
it cannot be a body, because a body is a hylomorphic composite of matter and form. It cannot be a soul, because the soul is corporeal in origination, and that implies corporeality or body. So it has to be an intellect, an immaterial substance.
Okay.
And that which is immaterial is not subject to motion or change. It is not temporal.
Okay.
It is only things that are subject to motion that are temporal, because time is the measure of motion.
So is it fair to say that the universe at some point existed at a meta state level?
At a metaphysical level? Is that what you're
As
asking?
a meta, okay, let's call it metaphysical, because you mentioned that it's about the motion, it's about the material. So let's call it, it has a meta form before it came into its current form. Is it fair to conclude from what you said?
Well, you would need to explain what, because like these terms are not philosophical terms. What do you mean by metaform?
Because you said that it must have
If you mean immaterial,
Yeah.
if you mean immaterial,
Yeah.
okay, it's immaterial, so that is metaphysical. Okay.
Okay.
Is
Fair
that what
enough.
you're asking?
Okay, okay, we can call it that. I mean, the reason I used word meta is because we are dealing with two distinct concepts here, which is the causal creation and the temporal. And if you say that it was not created at any point in deep time, but it had to exist because of the God's characteristic of being a creator. But we do know that the universe was created at some point. But despite that, beyond that point, if you believe it existed, it had to be a meta state of the material
Brother,
properties it
No,
entails.
no, 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 no,
brother
sir.
Kaisar.
No. Yeah, sir, you're assuming that it was. We know that it was created in time. I never said that.
Yeah.
So, okay,
Let
Why are
me let
you?
me let
then
Why
I
are
me
you
ask you a
making?
question. No, sir, I'm not making any
just a
assumption.
minute.
Now I ask you a question. Is it fair
If I
to
could
please? Sure,
if
sure.
I could interject in between, then I think this would become very clear as to what the opinion of the philosophers is. Kaisar bhai. See, the fundamental question here is not even whether the universe is eternal or not. Even that in itself is a secondary question. You know, the fundamental difference here is between the accounts of causation that are being presupposed, right? Because you are presupposing that for a thing to be a creation, i.e., for a thing to be essentially contingent, it has to be temporally originated, right?
Sure.
Now, the strongest, yeah. So now the question here is that obviously temporal origination has happened at a particular time. For example, my temporal origination or your temporal origination or the universe's temporal origination happened at a specific time in the past,
Mhm.
right? Which you would call time zero or something like that, right? Now, I think everyone would agree with that. Now, the philosophers ask this question: do the mutakallimin believe in existential inertia or not? Right? That's the question. Existential inertia is the proposition that things in existence tend to remain in existence unless they are sent into non-existence. Right? So now the Islamic philosophers do not believe in the notion of existential inertia. Right? In the Islamic philosophical framework, any contingent quiddity in its own self is devoid of existence, right? Such that at any point, if it is to exist, it is to necessarily derive its existence from an external cause and ultimately from the necessary existence, right? So now the question would be right now, Kasasab, right now, let's forget about what happened like at Big Bang, or do you think right now the we are being created or we are being sustained by the divine essence?
Sure.
What accounts for it?
So now if you say
Yeah, so does that make us
exactly what
any
account,
less created? The fact that we are being created by Allah right now does not make us any less of a creature.
Wait, Khalid, let him address what accounts for it
but
first.
but here's the problem now you run into a contradiction, right? The contradiction is that for you, malake ihtiyaj is temporal, and Hassan Bhai has already presented this objection. I'm
Burhan,
just
yeah.
rephrasing it once again. Yeah, it is a burhan that for you, malake ihtiyaj is temporal origination. It is hudus bizaman, right? But now the thing is that as we exist right now, we do not have hudus bizaman, right? The universe does not have at least according to the mutakallimin, the mystics and others, they might say something else in a certain way, but for the mutakallimin, the universe right now does not have hudus bizaman, right? So if the universe does not have hudus bizaman right now, then, and if hudus bizaman is identical and synonymous with malake ihtiyaj, then adme hudus zamani would entail adme malake ihtiyaj, and adme malake ihtiyaj entails adme ihtiyaj, and that would entail that everything else apart from God is necessary in itself, and that would be a contradiction, right? So the problem is you have simultaneously affirmed malaki ihtiyaj when you said, we are being created by God right now, and you have also denied malaki ihtiyaj because you have said we are at this current moment not temporally originated. So now the only way to deny this implication is that you accept that there is a malaki ihtiyaj, actually the real malaki ihtiyaj, which is not hudus bizaman, which is actually hudus bizat, which, by the way, I would like to correct you. In the post-classical tradition, nearly all the works do actually accept this distinction between hudus zamani and hudus zati, and they even accept hudus dahri. So if you read, for example, any of the post-classical commentaries, even from the subcontinental tradition, you read Sulamul Ulum, or many other works in the subcontinental tradition, or even in the Ottoman tradition, all of them are pretty clear in differentiating between the different types of hudus, precisely because of this objection raised by the philosophers.
Right. Okay. I
So
think we've.
so now let's just
Yeah. Thank you. I
yeah.
think we've established that a little while ago that this is not a mainstream opinion, and I also feeling that we were getting somewhere. So if you don't mind, if we can skip what you just said now and go back to what we were discussing before, and I say this out of respect because we had a very solid line of argumentation.
No, that's fine.
Thank
That's
you, sir.
fine. We can come to Malaki
Thank you.
Ihtiyaj. Don't worry.
Hasnain Saab, so you're talking about the causal creation and the temporal creation. When you say that the universe is not temporally created, but nevertheless
Qaisar
it was
Saab,
formed.
if I may, you haven't addressed the question. I mean,
Sorry, what's the question?
I asked the same question that Ilyas just repeated. It is, sir, the malak ihtiyaj. What is the malak ihtiyaj? You need to account for that.
I thought we decided to pick one point, which we did, and now we were following that. So I asked you a question that is it fair to say
I
that
addressed that. I
the
addressed that.
universe? Yeah, I get it. But then I asked a follow-up question that is it fair, based on what you said, that the universe had existed in some meta form before, if it was not temporally created? And that's what we were discussing before, to something else. So if we can pick the line from that point exactly, am I right
Yes,
to
yes.
understand that this is what
I'm
you mean?
responding to that only. Yes, yes.
Sure.
I addressed the same only when I said that the first effect couldn't have been a body, it couldn't have been matter, it couldn't have been substantial form, it couldn't have been a soul, it couldn't have been an accident. So I was actually in effect responding to the same question. So I've already addressed
Sure.
it.
So it must have been some immaterial form of what we now call the universe, right?
Everything save God, okay,
Mhm.
is a part of the universe. Okay, so the first effect is other than God. So you have the universe.
Okay. So we are talking about the universe specifically, right? So,
Yes, yes,
um,
yes. It makes no difference. It just has to be contingent. So
yeah.
if something exists and is contingent in itself with respect to existence,
Sorry, contingent
regardless,
to do what, sir?
contingent in itself, contingency, imkan khas, imkan zati, which
Of
means
course.
being mutasawi or nisba bain al wujud wal adam, which means the
Perfect.
negation of the necessity of existence and the necessity of non-existence. That is, being neither zaruri al wujud and
We will
neither
get to that.
zaruri al adam.
No, sir, I'm talking about the function of it, not the definition of it. So it is contingent. Well, contingent to become what?
Contingent to become, it is contingent on God, its cause, because it is
Yeah.
necessary through another. What do you mean by contingent to become what? It is, or
For
it is
example,
He's
pre-eternal.
contingent
asking
to
about
There is
exist.
no
illat-ghai,
becoming.
I think.
So contingent to
What?
exist, for example.
I think
Yes, it
he's
is.
asking about illat-ghai, Hasnan bhai.
No. He's not asking about the illitilai. There is no becoming, sir, in the metaphysical realm, because that would imply gradual motion and time and motion.
When
So
we say
since the
differential, what?
metaphysical realm is, wait, let me complete. Since the
So,
metaphysical world is devoid of matter, okay, so there can be no motion. And since there is no motion there, there is no becoming there. Everything there is a pure actuality.
that is pretty much, well, that is the godlike characteristic. And if we are to say this, and there is no difference between what you call the contingent or necessary.
If I can respond in a brief sentence. So, the primary difference between God and the first intellect is essential necessity with respect to the divine and essential contingency with respect to the first intellect.
I
Okay, the
agree with that.
first intellect is essentially contingent. Once you
Totally
have
agree.
affirmed essential contingency for anything, that basically means that it is perpetually dependent in all aspects upon the divine. That is, not just for the establishment of its existence in pre-eternity, but
Yeah.
also for the perpetuation of its reality for all eternity, and also for all its attributes of ontological perfection, that is knowledge, potency, life, existence, will, okay? And this dependence is perpetual and it is
Yeah.
absolute. So the first intellect is not autonomous or independent or self-sufficient in any respect, in the
Okay.
minutest degree. It is
Yeah.
perpetually and absolutely dependent upon the divine. And that, for the
I agree with that.
philosophers, is the primary distinction.
I agree with that, and that's why you are wrong with respect, sir, to what you said immediately before the last point you've made. Because if in that metaphysical realm everything is actuality, that means there is zero potentiality. And if there is zero potentiality, well, that is the godlike characteristic. So something which is contingent upon God has become like God. So both statements can't be true. I agree with the latter one, not the former one. Maybe you were looking for different words. That's a possibility. I don't know. But the question that I've asked a couple of times, where I think I need to articulate it a little bit more clear, because you are a person of good enough words to answer that. If I had articulated that in a more appropriate manner. And here's the question again: the
If I may
contingency
respond
that
to
you
this
talk about.
godlike attribute, if I may
Can I
respond to
ask a
this
question,
godlike
sir?
attribute. Okay,
I think
fine, okay,
that's
fine.
we can leave that. When you say that thing A, thing B is contingent upon God, I think we established that it's contingent to exist, right? Now, if it is contingent to exist, well, it is
Sir,
contingent.
Kaisar Saab,
Yeah.
sir, this is, I mean, I've addressed a question from your side. I think it is only fair for you to address my question. I mean,
We're
otherwise
getting
it
there.
would sound more like an
We are
interrogation
getting there, sir.
than
No,
a
no, it's not
dialogue. So I
interrogation.
think let us
Okay,
keep it a
let me ask
dialogue.
the
I have no problem. You can ask as many
look.
questions as you like, sir. And in
I
fact, we can have multiple sessions.
I am doing
I
this.
mean, no problem.
Look, I
So
am answering your
yeah,
question if you think about it, because through this conversation we are building an answer, and by the end of it, I'm hoping that it will have answered your question. So the
I
question
hope
I'm
so, but
asking
I'm
is that
extremely
if
suspicious of it. But I hope so. But sir,
okay, in that case,
you're not addressing the
in that
objection, the
case,
Malake
Hasnan
Hataj
sir,
question.
in that case, allow me to complete question one last time. Then I will respect your right to either answer it or not answer it. Is
Okay,
that fair?
please.
Right. When you say something is contingent and we established it's contingent to exist, that means that without that contingency, it would not exist. So what that tells us that contingency brings it from non-existence to
No,
existence.
sir, that is not what it means.
This is pure logic.
Kaisar Saab.
Because if that is not the case, then it
Kaisar
would
Saab, that is
mean the
not what I'm
thing would
saying.
exist. And just allow me to make the point. The alternative would be that the thing would exist and not exist, and that would break the law of non-contradiction, something that we started from.
Kaisar Saab, to be honest, you're not making any sense to me, at least. Kaisar Saab, that
That's a
doesn't
possibility.
what contingency means. Contingency is the negation of the necessity of existence and the necessity of non-existence. And it is the attribute, the trait of quiddity. Quiddity qua itself is nothing but itself. In itself, it is devoid of both existence and non-existence. Okay, so why are we saying that a quiddity, okay, is essentially contingent? We're saying it is essentially contingent because quiddity qua itself is devoid of existence and non-existence. In itself, that is fi nafsihi, it is neither existent nor is it non-existent. It is faqid wujud or faqid adam. And because it is such, therefore it is contingent. I.e., it is neither necessary for it to exist, nor is it necessary for it to not exist. That is, existence is neither identical to the quiddity, nor is it a part thereof. Similarly, non-existence is neither identical to the quiddity, nor is it a part thereof. Are you getting my point? And that is why, because it is contingent, so this entails its dependence for the preponderance of its existence over non-existence, or alternatively speaking, the preponderance of its non-existence over existence over an external preponderator, that is a cause. Now, this cause could be a cause for existence or a cause for non-existence. Okay. So sir, that is what I'm saying. I didn't say what you're saying.
I fully understand that. And one of the reasons I disagree with you is because I understand what you say. Now, based on what you just said, is it fair to conclude that the universe is co-eternal with God?
Sir, what do you mean by co-eternal?
The universe is.
You're using these terms, but you're not explaining them. You need to explain what you mean by co-eternal.
I'm not the one who is doing that. You are defining the rules of metaphysics without explaining where these rules come from. You're explaining the laws of logic within that very tight Aristotelian framework without explaining where these rules come from. It's not me who is doing that, sir. It's not me. For example, you said that in the metaphysical realm, everything is actuality. Well, based on what? What human experience do we have to conclude that?
आप बोलें आप अपना आगे just let me add, it doesn't make any difference whether who said it, whether it was Avicenna, Aristotle, Plotinus, Proclus, as long as it is the truth. That is all that matters, because revelation does not contradict. Through arguments, through discursive reasoning, like I said, is the demonstration, is the argument reducible to the axiomatic self-evident truths that has the principle of non-contradiction, the law of identity, the law of excluded middle. So if it is reducible to that, then it is true, it is valid. Okay, but if it is not, you need to demonstrate
those laws of logic, aren't we?
The conversation would benefit by talking about the actual account of causation.
So we are trying to establish, right, one of those laws of.
Yes, Qaisar Sahab, you need to. आप बोलें, आप सवाल का तो जवाब दें, कैसे भाई मैं तो दे रहा हूँ. But you need to address my question. I'm not only addressing your question, I'm also correcting your questions for you.
But this is I'm in my mid-40s, and to be honest, I've learned to avoid these things because they can only derail conversations here and there. There is not very much.
I agree. आप सही कह रहे हैं. I agree.
Okay. Let me just moderate here a bit. Qaisar bhai, if you want to finish, you can. But let us then come to the because I think that's the most important part of the conversation, which is what is malaki ihtiyaj for you. So once you are done with whatever you say, I would request Hasnain bhai, so please consider that we talk about malaki ihtiyaj itself, because I think that's the most important part. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you mind contextualizing it so that we have a starting point and then we will build an argument on that?
Yeah. So I did contextualize it.
I think, if I may, we have contextualized it. In fact, the malak-e-ihtiyaj issue, the problem, okay, I explained it twice to Qaisar Sahab. And then Elias, you have also contextualized it and elaborated upon it. So, but if he still wants further clarity, so we can do that, no problem. I mean, like, we can lay out the problem one more time.
Please.
Yeah, go ahead, Hasnain. You can do it much better.
Kaisar bhai, look, the
Sir.
thing is, if you say that a particular thing is dependent upon another, so you would need to provide an account for that dependence. That is, you would need to establish a criterion on the basis of which an effect depends upon the cause of its existence. That is the efficient cause, the illat fa'ili. Now,
Yeah.
for you, that criterion, that is the malak-e-ihtiyaj, okay, the criterion of dependence is temporal origination. That is hudus zamani, or simply put, hudus. Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, fine. But hudus, okay, fine. Once an existent comes, once a temporally emergent thing, that is an incipient, once it comes into existence, okay, then it either continues to remain dependent upon the necessary existent, that is God, or it doesn't. Okay, there can be only these two possibilities. Now, if you say that it doesn't continue to remain dependent upon the necessary being, that is God, then that basically implies a plurality of necessary beings. It implies a transition of that which was contingent towards essential necessity, and that is inqilab fil haqiqa, which is mumtaneh. Okay? So that is not possible. Okay, so the only alternative is to acknowledge that it continues to remain dependent upon the necessary existent. Okay, fine. But if it continues to remain dependent, so what is the criterion of its dependence upon the necessary existent? Now, this criterion...
Hasnain bhai, I have a small, I'm very sorry to cut you off, because you are presenting an argument that's a disjunctive syllogism, right? So for the sake of discussion, and obviously I don't mean to cut, but for the sake of discussion, I think it would be very helpful if we ask Qaisar bhai that does he agree with the first, the deductio ad absurdum for the first shoe or not? How do you think that's a feasible proposition?
Yes. And if you don't, so what is the apodictic proof for it?
Exactly. So,
Well,
Qaisar bhai, did you understand the first part? This is a disjunctive syllogism. So, Hasnain bhai has presented the first horn so far. So, do you agree with the impossibility of, there being the turning of a contingent quiddity into a necessary quiddity?
no, sir, I don't.
And why is that the case?
Because for that syllogism to work, the premise has got to be both solid, valid and sound, and they are neither.
So just to make sure, you do believe that it is possible
Yeah.
for there to be an existence after temporal origination, that existent be totally and wholly independent of God with respect to its
Well,
existence.
that's not the conclusion that follows from it. And the reason it doesn't is because the line of argumentation seems to suggest the certain limitation of God. And once we accept that limitation, then it doesn't matter what we follow afterwards. I mean, if you say that God is limited in that regard, then yeah, whatever follows afterwards is not depending on
No,
God.
that's
It
not
would
what
be
we're talking
equally
about, Kaisar
as
bhai.
well. Look, I've made that point, and I like to explain what I mean by that. Basically, what we are saying is that I mean, if I may start with Steelmaning the argument from the philosophers, and what
Yeah,
Aslan
go
Bhai
ahead.
also said, that their argument is that the universe is a necessary effect of an eternal cause, right?
No, Kaisar bhai, that is
No,
not what we are talking about, right?
that is not what we are talking about. We're talking about the malak-e-ihtiyaj, Kaisar bhai. Remain on this point.
But when we
You need to
say that,
resolve this.
um, um, I will have to complete my point to be able to do so, don't you think?
Yeah, go.
Thank you. So I
Kaisar bhai,
said,
just to make
I'm
it
making the,
clear that at
yeah,
at this point, we are not even talking about what we believe, how
yeah.
causation happened, or whether the universe is eternal or not.
But
We
that
are
is the
going
whole
towards
point. I mean,
something
this is
even
just
more simple.
this is one the sub niche of it. And if we get our basics right, because what
No, 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 no.
essentially what we are saying is that
Yeah,
we start working on a roof without building the walls beneath it, and I don't think it
yeah.
would
So
take us.
that's why we are going to the most basic point.
Yeah.
The most
Exactly.
basic point of
This is the
our
most fundamental point.
difference
Now the
is
most basic.
malake ihtiyaj.
No, this is a supportive argument. The main argument
No, no, no. This is not
is
a
the
supportive
necessary
argument.
existence of
This
the
is the
universe.
very fundamental difference
No,
between the
sir, I
mutakallimin and the
disagree.
falasifa.
Yes, this is the fundamental.
Yeah,
It is the bone of contention.
If
It is because of this that the entire dispute arises in the first place.
Okay, so the idea would be that if the universe, and I'm saying this in a watered down version, by all means you can correct me, that if the universe was created temporally, that would mean that when it was not created, a certain characteristic of
no,
God.
Kaisar bhai, this
This
is
is
not even a premise in the
Okay,
argument.
go on, help me understand. It's
We are
quite
not
possible
right
that
now. We are not talking.
I think
Okay, okay, Kaisar bhai, let
I
me
think
try to
it
explain it to
would
you.
be helpful
Right
if
now, when
it would be helpful
yeah,
if one of you two gentlemen can explain that, because it does get confused. I'm
sure,
very
sure,
sure your point is
no,
a
no
lot
problem,
more clear in your head than how it is articulated, but I think it will be helpful if
no,
one
no
person
problem,
takes charge
no
here.
problem. Okay, okay, no problem. The fundamental question that is being asked right now is what is the account of causation, right?
Mhm.
Now, what is an account of causation? An account of causation is basically a definition of the causal relationship between any two existents, one of which is a cause and the other an effect,
Yeah,
right? So a causal account would be for any x, right? Why is the cause if and only if, right? Basically, you are asking for the definition of what it means to be a cause. You are
mm,
asking for malake ihtiyaj,
yeah.
the substrate of dependence,
Mhm.
right? Now, forget everything about what we have talked about, universe being temporally originated, whatever. Right now we are going to the most basic question. Right now we have not even presented a demonstration for the eternity of universe or the existence of the first intellect or anything like
Yeah,
that. This is the basis of even the contingency argument itself, because even the contingency argument begins from us defining what is malake
yeah.
ihtiyaj, right? Now, for the falasifa, the malake ihtiyaj is what? It is not huduse zamani.
Sure.
It is the mahiya being mutasawiyun nisba bain al wujud wal adam. Yani equidistant, the quiddity being equidistant from both existence and non-existence, such that it is neither dhururiyatul wujud or dhururiyatul adam. Right? This is the malaki ihtiyaj for the falasifa. Now, when the same question is directed towards the mutakallimin, that what is the malaki ihtiyaj? What is the substrate of dependence? The classical mutakallimin, or to be honest, the post-classical mutakallimin, they have done tahqiq on this and they actually align closer with the philosophical position. But the classical mutakallimin, such as Imam Ghazali, they say malake ihtiyaj is hudus zamani, right? Now, the philosophers said, okay, that is fine. If you say malake ihtiyaj is hudus zamani, that's okay. But then there is a contradiction that follows. So now this is the beginning of the objection, that we are saying, okay, if the malaki ihtiyaj is merely hudus zamani, then there would be a contradiction. And now how is the contradiction shown? The contradiction is shown through a disjunctive syllogism, right? Such that there are two horns of it, and both of them are reductio ad absurdum, and both of them lead to a contradiction. So now, what's the horn? The horn is this. Imagine an existent that has gone through temporal origination, right? So at this point, we are granting you the fact that the universe, for example, is indeed temporally originated. So right now, the debate is not about whether the universe is temporally originated or not. Right now, the question is, let us just grant the fact that the universe is temporally originated, or any existence for that matter is temporally originated. Now the question is that, okay, what makes it caused? What renders it to be a caused thing? What renders it makhluk? So now if someone says that the makhluqiyya, the quality of it being creation is hudus zamani, then the question is, does hudus zamani, is it muhtaj lil wujud, or is it not? I.e., is it dependent for its wujud or not? Right? So now here is the notion of existential inertia as well. And even within metaphysicians, and I'm just talking in the analytic tradition or just generally atheists and whatever, there's this question of existential inertia, which is the same thing. The question is this, that is a thing after it is brought into existence, is it still muhtaj li wujudi or is it not? Right? This is the first question. Now, if somebody says that it is not muhtaj li wujud, it is not dependent for its existence after its temporal incipience, then that would entail that insofar as it has its own quiddity, that quiddity has become necessary with respect to existence, such that it does not require now an external cause for the necessitation of its existence. And that would entail the establishment of multiple necessary existence, and that's a contradiction. Now, if somebody says, no, we don't believe that. We don't believe that it is not muhtaj. We believe that, okay, even after hudus zamani, it is muhtaj. And I think all the Muslims would say this. Even from a scriptural basis, everyone would say that even after hudus zamani, a shay is still muhtaj li wujudi ila Allah ta'ala. Right? Now the question is that if the shay is still muhtaj, for example, if I am still muhtaj for wujud on God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then what is the malak-e-ihtiyaj right now? So now the malak-e-ihtiyaj cannot be temporal origination because I do not have temporal origination anymore, right? So now the causal relationship cannot be explained through temporal originative terms. So now there are two options here. Either one posits that, since there is no temporal origination, there is no malaki ihtiyaj, and since there is no malaki ihtiyaj, there is no muhtaji, and this thing has become a necessary existence. Or they posit that no, there is malaki ihtiyaj, but this malaki ihtiyaj is non-identical to hudus zamani, and there is in fact another malaki ihtiyaj which is hudus zati, and that is the malaki ihtiyaj that is explaining the ihtiyaj of this existence even post temporal origination, right? So now that since we are presenting horns of the argument, the very first question from you would be, do you actually even believe that ba'd az hudus zamani, after hudus zamani, do the things possess existential inertia or do they not? Because if they possess existential inertia, then that would be the end of the horn. You have already basically just accepted that things in their own reality can be necessitated. So the very first question would be, do you accept existential inertia or not?
No, sir, that would not be the very first question. The very first question is whether I agree with the inferential structure of the criterion of dependency being Hadus Zamani. And my answer is
No,
no.
Kaisar bhai, no,
Look,
no,
unless you say
no.
that I have to
inferential structure follows after the first
Oh no, sir.
premise.
You are,
Right
no,
now,
no,
we are asked.
hold on, hold
Okay,
on. This is
okay,
an
go ahead.
inference that the criterion of dependence is Hadith Zamani. You need to ask me if I subscribe to that notion, and you might be surprised by my answer, and which is no, I don't. And
Okay,
if we are to remove that,
okay, so
that caveat that you
okay,
said,
okay, okay. Kaisar
everything
bhai,
else that you said
I
after
understand. So
that,
amazing,
it
amazing.
becomes,
So are you saying, okay, that's fine. Are you saying that malake ihtiyaj
yeah.
is it of multiple iqsam or is it of one qism?
Why is it so important for us to limit it
Hmm.
to Hadith Zamani? And where we say that, look,
No, no,
that
I'm
itself.
not saying you should limit it. We are saying the
So
He's
exact
this
not
is,
limiting
opposite.
it.
We are
Yeah, yeah.
saying,
He's saying the
oh, you
exact
are.
opposite.
Oh no, sir. If you are saying if you're saying it opposite, let me actually give you an opposite. If I say that, look, we say we remove all these the inferences that we have about the criterion and so forth. We say criterion with capital C. Let's call that God. That if God doesn't exist, nothing else exists. Okay, so we reverse engineer,
no,
or
no,
at least
Kaisar
we
bhai,
think from what
that's
we
not
do.
the topic.
Now,
Right now, the topic is even more fundamental than God himself. This is what we are
you see,
saying.
this is
Because even our,
you see,
yeah,
brother.
because
This is what I
even
said
our
to.
demonstration,
If you allow me to
yeah,
make a
yeah, yeah,
point,
because
that
even,
it,
even our demonstration of the existence of the
no, but this is
divine
based on
is contingent.
this is based on preconceived caveats that I don't subscribe to. Neither do the Sawadi
Okay,
Hazam of
okay,
Ummah.
that's fine.
This is what you need to
Brother,
understand. And
Kaisar,
what if I make if I may
brother,
make a
either
point, sir.
either you have an account
Sir,
of causation or you
if
don't.
I
There's no third way
if
about
I
it.
may make a point,
Yeah, yeah, go
what
ahead,
I
go
was
ahead.
saying to Brother Hasnain earlier, that I admire the fact that you are inside a fortitude of arguments, but the trade-off of that is
यार
that
कैसर भाई
if
नहीं करे
from
ना ऐसे
anything,
रेटोरिक छोड़ दें यार प्लीज यू
anything,
स्टिक टू द
so
we have
do you
tried
mind?
to remain on
Do
the
you mind,
actual
sir?
topic please.
Do you mind,
don't
sir?
don't don't say things like that. These
I
ruin you
no,
yourself
it's
said
not.
these
It's not
things ruin
doing
the
it.
conversation.
I'm
we
making a
we are
point
trying
here,
to
and
go to the
I'm
very
inviting you.
basic.
And I think you're
Yeah,
completely
yeah, we
misinterpreting
have
me.
been
You're
invited.
applying
We
the
have
wrong
read.
meaning of what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
we have
If you
read
let me
these works
finish,
that you're positing. Not
if
only
you
have we read Ghazali or Razi, even to be honest, even
yeah,
their works you were not representing correctly. We have even read the post-classical scholars, right? So
you are an
let
amazing
us not
person.
go
And
there and talk about,
well, look,
who has read who. We
I
have not
truly
commented. We have not commented
look. I
on
mean, look,
your lack of education
there
or
is no
anything like that.
point.
Rather, we have given you
There is no,
full. Yeah, exactly. There is no.
but there is
Yes, exactly. I
no.
agree with you. There is no point
Seriously, I
in
mean, even last time we had the
talking
same
down your interlocutor and saying things like
the
that.
last time we
The
had the same
primary
problem.
question is,
You know, the
what
last
is the
time.
account of causation? Either
Wait,
you agree with Imam
do you
Ghazali to
mind?
say that the account of causation is temporal origination,
Do
or
you
you don't agree
mind?
with him, in which case you agree with the philosophers. So which
Okay,
one is it? Do you agree that the account of causation
look, I
is
mean,
temporal
by all
origination,
means, if you've
or
made
or yeah,
brother, if you've made a video on this, give me the link. I will listen to your monologue, no problem. But if you're having a discussion, then at least from the ethical
yeah,
viewpoint,
yeah. If we are having a
it's a
discussion,
bare
we should
minimum
remain on
requirement
topic.
that
Yeah,
you let me
go
make a
ahead.
point.
Yes, yes, you are being, and we have
I'm
been very
I'm
fair, to be honest.
I'm letting you
All we want is
know.
we do not want rhetorical moves.
No, I
if you,
don't.
Brother
I'm not
Kesser,
going into
I'm gonna
that.
shut up.
I'm not
Yeah,
going
all I
into.
want to say is that if you
Allow me.
if you play rhetorical moves, the other side can do so as well, but we don't want that. We
But
want
I'm
to
not
have
doing
a
that.
serious,
I'm not doing
good
that.
faith conversation. So now
I'm
I'm
not
going to
doing
shut
that.
up. I'm going to mute
No,
my
I'm
mic
not
and I'm
doing
going to
that,
let
sir.
you speak, and
No,
I
I'm not.
believe you would have the
Look at that.
courtesy to not go
This
on
is.
to these
But
tertiary
again,
topics
you will
about what
have
we should
to
read and what we should not
look.
read. Go ahead,
You
please.
will have to claim that you are beyond some temporal bound that you knew exactly what I was going to say before I even completed that. This is just even last time we had the same problem. You know, we are not saying anything negative here. I'm not saying anything bad about it. All I'm saying is, in good faith, that it is okay to entertain other person's premises too, because when you sit in a fortitude of arguments, it gives you a lot of comfort. But it comes with a trade-off that you do not see other person's viewpoint. What I'm asking is that you have set very particular set of rules here, and you want me to have this conversations based on that. Whereas I'm saying that I challenge the whole premises, and you have your right to disagree with me on that, each and everything I say. But it doesn't mean that if you disagree with me, I make a point and I ask you to look at my viewpoint for a minute, just desert your position, just look at what I'm saying. It doesn't mean that you start become personal and amaze me about
No,
things that
nobody
you
is
know
getting
about me,
personal,
without
Kaisar
even
bhai.
knowing what
Yeah,
where I
no,
live,
yeah,
without
no,
even knowing
nobody has attacked you
the
on this
people I
stage.
spend my time with. You
So
know that what I know and what I don't know. That is
no,
very
nobody
unfortunate.
has
We've
made.
had a very
Rather,
good
you
conversation
are
up
the
to this
one.
point. We've
Okay,
had a
okay.
very good conversation up to
Let
this
us.
point. But there was absolutely
Yeah, yeah, and we
laziness, and
can
I'm
continue that, but
well, we
we
can,
should
but you
remain
have
on
to.
topic.
Well,
Yeah,
again, I'd like to get to the topic, which is very simple.
yeah. Let's
And
get to the topic then.
yeah, please allow me to do that. But
Okay,
it
okay. Go
requires,
ahead.
it necessitates as you let me make my point instead of assuming what I was
Go
about to
ahead.
say.
Go ahead. By all means, make your point.
I trust you this time, sir. Right. The whole idea of making the criterion of dependency hadus zamani, I categorically disagree with it. Just like the Swadhyas Muhammad does, because if we use capital C and we say God, well, that is the whole criterion of everything. That leaves us with some very, very simple questions afterwards. And they go something like this. The claim about the universe being azli, which is eternal in the past, but still it's muhtaj at the same time. It's dependent, well, because its essence is only possible while God's essence is necessary. That's essentially, in a nutshell, that's what the argument is. Well, it's wrong because if the universe is eternal, it means that there was never a time, or let
That's
us say
not
a
the argument,
state.
Kaisar Saab.
Again, sir, if you want me to leave, I'm happy to do so.
No, you want us to cut you off, and
Kaisa
I
bhai,
don't.
you want to leave actually.
I
Kaisa
don't. I
bhai,
just want to make a point. If you give me a
Kaisa
minute,
bhai,
I'll
it's
conclude.
okay. Yeah, yeah,
You
yes. Let him speak. But Kaisa bhai, you've already made this point, and this point has been refuted time and again.
It
But
has not been
if you want
refuted.
to go
No,
through,
sir. It has not been
sir,
refuted.
it has
The
been. You can
regurgitation
keep
of
saying
what
that
was
as
said by
many times as you
Aristotle
like, but it has
and
been.
what was said by Aristotle, 2,000 years ago, isn't it does not equate the refutation. You have to come
Sir,
up with something by explaining why do you believe these
sir, I
rules are
haven't even
necessary
dropped
and
a
making
single
sense.
name. I provided demonstrations. I
But
didn't drop names, sir.
despite my brother believes that I have not read these things, I happen to have read these things, so I kind of know where the arguments come from.
Mashallah,
And
mashallah, you have, and it's good for you. It's good for you.
Thank you.
It's good for you. You can share
Yeah.
whatever you know. You can
So
share it with us. We'll
if I
benefit
can just
from it. Okay,
complete this
fine.
point and ask you, how do
Yes,
you
you may.
respond to
Yes, you may.
this?
But sir, you're not addressing. Look, the thing is,
I am
you would make this
addressing. Look,
point.
the essential point, Hasnan Sahab, give me a minute. The essential point is that the
Okay,
universe
fine.
itself is eternal, but at the same time, it is muhtaj, right? So we come to Milaki Ehtiyaj, for example, on this point, then we ask a simple question: what
That
is the
is not,
criterion of dependence?
Kassis Saab, that is not
All
the
right,
point.
ask
But you
me.
may
Okay,
continue.
let me make it easy for everyone. Ask me, sort of break down your argument in question and ask me one tiny question at a time, and we'll move on, and I'll give the minimal answer as well. So at least step by step, we will be making our way towards a destination. Is that fair?
beautiful,
Go
beautiful.
on.
This is precisely what I
Who
was
will do it?
suggesting.
Who will do it? I did ask, please, one person take reign, because you both have some subtleties, and problem is that you both want your questions answered, and I have that
No,
limitation.
we are two mouths, but we are saying the same thing. So
Can I
whatever the
request for
case
one
may
mouth?
be,
Is that
we'll
if that
slice
is
this.
not too much to ask?
No problem. I mean, would you like me
Thank
to
you.
do it or Elias? Your pick.
You make that decision, sir.
Okay, fine. Sir, this is, I think, probably the fifth time that I would be doing it, but here goes again.
Ask Ilyas Saab. I don't mind that.
Sir, I mean, I did it for you, not for Elias. Elias has already made the same argument. But okay, fine. I mean,
Yeah,
let's go through it again.
please.
Okay, let us not to try to score points over one another, because this is not a point scoring exercise. At least
It is.
not
I
on
know.
my part. Okay, I mean,
Same, sir.
I'm more interested in enabling you to empathize with our position. Okay, and also seeking to empathize with your position, which I feel that I already have done to a great extent, but obviously you would have a difference of opinion with that.
All
No
right.
problem.
Convert it in
Okay.
tiny, small questions, and this is how we should build as we agreed. Please go on.
I'll lay down the argument the way I think it's appropriate to do so. But yes, you can ask clarificatory questions, clarifying questions, and I would do my utmost to address them to the best of my abilities. Look, sir. Okay, consider something incipient, something temporally emergent, something temporally originated, something hadis. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, after the realization or the establishment of its existence, that is its hudus wujud, okay, it either continues to remain dependent upon the necessary existent or it doesn't. Okay, there can be no other alternative or option. Okay, if you say, or if not you, if anyone says that it is no longer dependent upon the necessary existent after the realization or the establishment of its existence, that is, after its temporal origination has ceased, okay, then that basically implies that which is contingent, because everything that is temporally originated is contingent, because there was a period of time in which it was non-existent. I mean, its prior non-existence is evidence of the fact that it is not necessary in itself. Okay, and its subsequent existence is evidence of the fact that it is not impossible in itself with respect to existence. Because had it been impossible in itself, that is mumtana bizatihi min haythu wujud, so it would have never entered the realm of existence. Okay, but the fact that it has entered the realm of being and it has experienced temporal origination and has come into existence proves that it isn't. Therefore, being neither essentially necessary nor essentially impossible with respect to existence, that leaves us with only one possibility, that it is essentially contingent with respect to existence. Now, if it is essentially contingent, and if you say that it is no longer dependent, okay, so that which is absolutely self-sufficient is essentially necessary. So that basically implies the transition of the contingent in itself towards essential necessity and entails a plurality of necessary beings. Okay, the first necessary being its cause, that is the necessary existent, and the second necessary being it itself. Okay, but if you say that no, even after the realization of the establishment of its existence, that is hudus wujud, it continues to remain ontologically dependent in all respects upon the divine. Okay, so what accounts for this continued dependence now that temporal origination or incipience has ceased? This is the fundamental problem.
Okay. Can I ask questions about it?
Yeah, sure.
All right. I was hoping that we would go with the small steps so that we can create a clarification. But if I am to deconstruct, if I ask you that by doing making this argument, essentially what you're saying is that if the universe was temporally created, then immediately after the event of causation, that causation would no longer be required because the effect is there, it has materialized, and without that cause, that effect has become independent, therefore necessary in its own right. Is that pretty close to what you said?
No, sir. That is not what I'm saying.
Let's break it
I'm,
down then. Let's go with what we
okay.
agreed with, make small questions, and we move forward.
I think, Elias, you can do the questioning better than me. I mean,
Yeah.
Okay. Kaisar bhai, dekhen. The very first question would be to begin from this question, right? Do things have existential inertia, right? Now, if we believe in the law of non-contradiction, then the answer could either be yes or no, and it cannot be both at the same time, right? So what do you believe? Do things have existential inertia or do they not have existential inertia?
By existential inertia, you mean that things will continue to exist until they are brought into a non-existent state, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Once they are in existence, then until they are stopped from being in existent state. True, I agree with that part.
Mm-hmm.
But that is only valid once they are in existence.
Awesome. So you basically you believe that after Hudus Zamani, there is no ihtiyaj wujudi.
I don't think so. I didn't say that.
This is so this is existential inertia. So you're saying you don't believe that, right?
No,
So you
we,
believe after hudus zamani there is ihtiyaj wujudi.
yeah, of course, because at the end of the day, the thing, if a
Ahsan,
contingent being,
exactly.
if a
Excellent.
contingent being,
Very
if,
good.
Excellent.
Excellent.
This is what we believe as well.
This
yeah,
is
Yes.
what
well,
we are
let's,
saying also.
yeah, you see, the problem we are having is that now we are talking about once the universe is created, we are talking about the point when you believe that it was not temporally created, but it was causally
No, no, Kaisar
created.
bhai,
Kaisar
You
bhai,
still
leave
Kaisar
have
bhai.
that.
that problem.
Ilyas, एक minute.
That's not
Ilyas, एक minute.
even the part of discussion.
Kaisar bhai, for the moment, for the sake
Yeah,
of understanding the notion, okay, just
yeah.
concentrate upon understanding the notion.
Mhm.
Forget the entire debate between the hudus or regarding the hudus qudum alam. Forget it for the time
Okay.
being. Just concentrate and focus upon understanding the argument itself. Okay, so
Yeah.
so you'll be able to appreciate it better.
Okay. So we've established that once the universe is created, it will remain dependent on God. Is that the case?
Awesome, awesome.
We
So
agree with
exactly.
that.
So now both of us believe that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now both of us believe that even ba'd as hudus zamani, even after temporal incipience or creation or origination, whatever one might want to call it, there is existential destitute and depravity with regards to existence, and the contingent existent keeps on depending upon the divine essence for its instantiation, right?
It will remain contingent or necessary being. Yes, true.
Exactly. And it will derive its existence from the necessary existence,
Yeah,
right?
true.
Oh, amazing. Now, at the present, or at any moment after temporal origination, right, the derivation of its existence, right, or the substrate of creation or the substrate of dependence, malak ihtiyaj, that is not there anymore. Temporal origination has ceased, right?
How?
So yeah, because it is not being temporally originated now, right?
How did we
It was
conclude?
temporally
How did we
origin.
jump from here to there?
Okay. So do you believe it is being temporally originated at all points?
Well, that's it. Can't be all points. If it is temporal, it has to be one point, some point, not all points.
Exactly, exactly. So now
Exactly.
the
But
question
That's
but
is
I'm
correct.
more
if
interested.
exactly,
But I'm interested in
exactly.
how did we jump from here to there?
You said it
It's
yourself.
you said it
No, but
You
you
yourself,
have
just
to
said
Kaisar
it
bhai.
explain.
yourself.
But you have to explain that if the universe, once it is
Yeah, yeah.
created, its continued sustenance is still dependent
Mm-hmm.
on the necessary being, then according to you, the Hadus Zamani is no longer in action, in play. My question is, how did you get there?
No, 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 no. The question is it deriving its existence
Yeah,
from the first cause, right? So
yeah.
now this derivation of existence,
Hmm.
right? Is it now listen very closely. Let us pause the whole reality,
Hmm.
right? There is no before, there is no after. We are talking about now,
Okay.
right? Now. So at now, is there a causal relation between the material universe and God?
Yes.
Ahsant. So now this causal relationship, the malak for this causal relationship by definition, right, cannot be temporal precedence,
Why
right?
not?
Because right now we are considering, yeah, I'm talking.
Hmm.
Because right now we are talking about reality at now,
Sure.
right? So
Hmm.
if this relationship, yeah, exactly. So if this relationship is present,
Yeah,
right, it is present now.
it
Do you
is.
understand?
So yeah, carry
It,
on.
yeah, it would. So then it would not be a temporal relationship. It would be a simultaneous relationship, such that the cause and the effect are being instantiated at the very same time.
No, that's not the case.
You understand? Because
You
right
have to
now we are talking
explain.
about now.
You have to explain.
Yeah,
Now,
exactly.
if you are talking
I
about
will
now,
explain.
don't go to temporal then, because you have to go way back in deep time,
Exactly.
and
No,
you
no,
have to. And
exactly. We are
if you
talking
are
about
doing
now.
that, if you are doing
So,
that, then you will have to explain how
okay.
did you
Yeah.
conclude from the fact that the universe owes its existence and its continued existence based on a necessary being, gives you the inevitable consequence in your understanding that it was not temporally created. You have to make that point, sir.
No, no, brother Kaiser. We are not talking about whether the universe is temporally created right now or not. That's not the point. We have granted you that the universe is temporally created, right? We are saying that even after temporal creation,
Hmm.
you have to posit a relationship of ihtiyaj that is simultaneous.
We've
This
established
is what we
that.
are saying.
We've established that. Yes, right
Okay,
now the universe
okay. So
owes
you
its
do, okay,
continued
amazing,
existence
amazing.
on
So
necessary being.
okay. So you do, okay. So just to make it clear. So now you believe, okay, so you do not believe now that malak-e-ihtiyaj is identical to hudus zaman. You don't believe this, just like we do not believe that.
Okay, so
What you have posited is,
if I
yeah, go
believe
ahead.
that the universe owes its current continued existence to the necessary being, that would mean
Yeah,
that it was the Hadus Zamani concept will not apply because it is not created temporally.
no, that's not what I'm saying.
No. That
I'm
is not
saying
what he's
if you
explaining, Kasawai.
believe,
Listen carefully.
Okay. I'm doing that's why I'm
I
stopping
am
at every
saying,
moment and trying to deconstruct and
yeah.
make sense of it.
I'll say it very slowly. I'm
Sure.
saying, if you believe that the universe is being instantiated right now by the divine essence,
Yeah.
then there have to be at least one additional malak of ihtiyaj, which is simultaneous causation, right? Because as of now,
So
at the very
simultaneous to
moment,
what?
right, by simultaneous, I mean at this very moment.
Okay. So all right. So
Like there is a
instantaneously
causal,
right
yeah, there
now.
has to be,
Sure. Sure.
yes, right now, there
Right.
has to be a causal relationship,
Uh-huh.
right, between the divine essence and the material reality.
Okay.
So now this particular, now the type of causal relationship that we are talking about now, obviously this type of causal relationship would not be hudus zamani. This type of causal relationship, because obviously hudus zamani happened for the material world, whatever you believe, how many years ago, billions of years ago, right?
Yeah.
So right now the causal relationship that is being instantiated between the material world and the divine essence, it is a causal relationship that is not hudus zamani. Right now we are not saying whether the alam, whether the material world is hadis zamani or not. That's not the point of the discussion. The point is that right now there is a causal relationship
Yeah.
that is not hudus zamani.
I get it, but how does this take us to this conclusion
Ahsan.
that
Yeah,
the
we will go there. We will go there.
well, we've
That's fine.
established this. Well, last
We
five
are
minutes
just,
ago, we established that. Yes, at the moment, yes, there is a causal
yeah,
relationship. It's
okay.
alive, it's
So
still living.
now, okay, amazing. So now you believe that there are at least two malaks, four, or you would say malakain, four hudus, right? One is hudus zamani, and the
Dependence.
other is this, yeah, dependence, this causal relationship that we have just talked about, which is simultaneous causation,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, sure. Again, we've established that. We have to move on to
Okay,
the we have
okay.
to link it to your core claim now.
What is the other one?
Please help me understand. Go on. You mentioned one is Hadus Zamani, but we still need to understand that if you are to remove Hadus Zamani, there has to be some kind of establishment there that connects these 2 points. You're yet to make that case, and I'm very patiently waiting for it.
Okay. Now, 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 what follows from this is that hudus, or let's not even call it hudus, malak-e-ihtiyaj, Malak-e-ihtiyaj is not identical to hudus-e-zamani.
That's the conclusion.
No, no, this is one of the conclusions, at
And how
least.
did we arrive there?
Malak-e-ihtiyaj, we just, didn't you just yourself agree that
You
there are
said it
two
yourself.
types of causal relation?
No, I said right now, in this moment, the universe owes its very existence and continued existence to the necessary cause. We've established that. But
Yeah,
from here
Yes,
to
yeah.
jump
yes.
So
to say
then,
that then the concept of Hadus money will not apply, you have to argue
no,
for
no,
it.
this is
Oh
not what we are
God.
saying, my brother. We are saying that they can, very simple. If a category has two iqsam, then you cannot say one qism is the whole of the category. This is as
Okay,
simple as that, right?
sure.
If for example you own two laptops,
Yeah,
then you cannot say that, oh, this one laptop that I own, Dell,
yeah.
subsumes the whole category of the laptops owned by a Qaisar. That would be wrong,
Hmm.
right? If there are two aqsam within a particular reality, then one qism cannot be identical to the whole reality. It
Okay,
cannot subsume the whole
I'm
reality,
very sure
right?
this
So,
concept is a lot more is clear in your mind than what is being articulated. You still have to make a case that when you say that the Hadus Zamani is not synonymous with the criterion of dependence, that is an assertion,
mhm.
and it's
Okay.
wholly
So,
and
so, so,
completely
okay. So,
unsubstantiated. You
okay.
only want us to believe that by making reference to the universe's current
Mhm.
continued existence. But what is the connection between these
Okay.
2 points?
Okay. So let's start from the basics. Are you positing that Malak-e-Ihtiyaj is identical to Hudus Zamani?
That's not the claim I'm making at all. I'm yet to give
Okay,
my judgment on
brother,
that.
Kaisar, brother, my brother, there are only two possibilities.
Yeah,
Either Malak-e-Ihtiyaj is identical to Hudus Zamani, or
yeah.
it is not. There is no third possibility here.
Okay,
It's P or not P.
sure.
Yeah.
What
So
do you
which one
think?
is it?
What is the case?
We don't think Malak-e-Ihtiyaj is identical to Hudus Zamani, of course. We don't believe that.
And this is the views of the philosophers
So
as
what do
well.
you believe? Yeah, this is a view of all the philosophers. Rather, I was even positing that not only this is the view of the philosophers, this is even the view of the post-classical mutakallimin,
Yeah.
because even they accepted this, differentiation given by Ibn Sina. So the only people who are, rather the fringe view in this case is yours. If you hold that view, I don't know if you do or not, but the fringe view is of Imam Ghazali, who posits that Malak-e-Ihtiyaj is identical to Hudus Zamani. Even the Atharis do not believe in it, i.e., the ones who claim that they are the best followers of Salaf Salih,
Hmm.
because even for them, Malak-e-Ihtiyaj is not Hudus Zamani, but that's for an even worse reason, because they posit that there can be Muhdas Ghair Makhluq. But
Okay.
in any case, even for them, Malak-e-Ihtiyaj is not Hudus Zamani. So the only ones who hold to this are the classical Ashari and Maturidi mutakallimin before 1300s, right? So
Okay.
now, now the question is, it's a very simple P or not P. Is Malak-e-Ihtiyaj identical to Hudus Zamani? Yes or no? That is, it's a P not P question.
Okay. So if I understood your question, just to make sure that I've got it right, what
Mhm.
you're saying essentially is that the if something comes into existence, um, the reason it becomes in existence is because it was contingent. Is that pretty close to what you're saying?
No.
Hmm.
What we are saying is that for something to be caused, right, for something to be a creation, for something thing to be muhtaj li wujudi, right,
Yeah.
to have existential destitute, what it means to be is that its quiddity is
Yeah.
equidistant from existence and non-existence.
Well,
That's it.
essentially what we're
That's
saying is
that's
that, I mean,
malake.
if there is
Yeah,
anything, I mean,
yeah.
अगर कोई भी चीज़ है, ये उसके अगर हम कहते हैं कि अगर वो मोहताज है, एहतियाज का वहाँ पे कॉन्सेप्ट अगर अप्लाई होता है, that the reason is that it came into existence, right? So it was not existing, but then it came to in existence. So that's where the principle of hadus would apply, right? Or the concept rather, not the principle.
Yeah, so if somebody says that malaki ihtiyaj is hudus zamani, then they would say that the only way for the establishment of the ihtiyaj of a thing is through its hudus zamani.
Of anything, or the universe in particular?
Yeah, anything, any existent.
Okay, well, I would argue that anything that comes into existence, it does so because it has a cause, and it would be contingent upon that cause.
Okay, so then are you positing that malaki ihtiyaj is identical to temporal origination?
It doesn't have to be identical. It could be one of the derivative meaning of it. Identical would mean
Okay,
that two things
that's
that
the
are
whole point.
synonymous to
That's
one
the whole
another.
point.
So, for example, if I
Yeah,
say that
either.
for example, if I say that a table was
Mm-hmm.
created by a person, so the table itself, it will come under the concept of ihtiyaj because it needs all four legs, it needs stable ground underneath and all that. So sure, it will be contingent upon those things, and it will be contingent upon the person who made it, and it will sustain it, will keep on applying curves, avoid the decay, and so
Okay,
forth.
okay.
But it does not mean that all of those things are synonymous with the existence of table itself.
B- Beautiful. Kaisar bhai,
Yeah.
this show. We are not talking about preparatory causes here.
Hmm.
We are talking about illat wujud baksh,
Sure.
right? The your parents or your the carpenter is not an illat wujud baksh for
Yeah.
the table or for you,
Sure.
right? We are talking about illat wujud baksh here.
Hmm.
So
But you understand that the
so the
concept I'm
question is,
applying, and from human experience, I can take this and we can go as far back in time, or in your case, without
yes,
time.
yes, but you see, Kaisar bhai, the problem is from human experience, you have never experienced illat wujud baksh.
Exactly.
Okay, well, in that,
You
Kaisar
have
in,
only
bhai,
experienced preparatory
sure.
causes.
This
Kaisar
is a
bhai,
And in
brilliant
the
point you've
external world,
made.
you have
Well,
existential
you've
inertia
made a
because when a
brilliant point here.
watchmaker,
Kaisar
Sir,
bhai.
yeah,
when when a watchmaker,
you've made a brilliant
just,
point here.
Yes, Kaisar
If you and
bhai.
just
I
let me say
both
one thing.
believe that this
Kaisar,
is beyond human
yeah,
experience,
Kaisar
no,
bhai,
just 30 seconds. Hassan, but just
please.
30 seconds. If you believe, you and I both believe that the human experience will not explain this because we have never seen anything like that, then it would be grossly inappropriate to say that we can get there using our logic or rationality or reason, because that is confined with our human experience. It doesn't go beyond that. So the whole case you've been
Yeah, Kaisar
building,
bhai, but you have
you've
just
literally
done the same
pulled the
thing.
rug underneath.
Kaisar bhai,
Yeah,
yeah, Kaisar bhai, you have just done the same thing yourself. I'll tell you how.
Exactly.
Because in the
please do.
external reality, you do not see the causal relation, the type of causal relationship that you just explained, where you said that we are getting wujud from Allah right now.
Yeah, sure.
Because in the external world, when, for example, a watchmaker makes a watch, even if the watchmaker were to go into non-existence, the
Yeah.
watch would still exist.
Okay.
Even if your parents go into non-existence,
Yeah.
you would still exist. Your existence is not simultaneously contingent upon the existence of your parents.
It's not about that. It's about making the point
It
that
is precisely about that.
if something exists and it requires certain things that it is contingent upon, that thing itself does not become synonymous with what it is contingent upon. That is the point. You were going in a completely wrong direction.
No, but Ilyas is not
Yeah,
saying that.
When you say that Hadus Zamani is synonymous with the criterion of dependence,
No,
is he not
no,
what he's saying?
no, Kaisar bhai.
we are not saying that.
We're
No,
not
you
saying that.
when you're asking me that question,
Oh my God.
if I believe that, right?
Okay.
Then my response to that is that you're assuming that if something is contingent on another thing, we do not have to conclude that that thing A, which is contingent on thing B, is synonymous with that.
Fine.
That's not what we are saying.
Yeah. Then you're agreeing with us. That is what Ilyas is saying.
No, he's not. He's
Oh my
asking me a question,
God.
and I'm pointing out the fundamental flaw.
No,
The
no, no. Kaisar bhai, let me explain.
the loading. Look, the loading or the framing of the question is
No, no, no.
flawed
You're not being
because
able to
he
understand. Let
wants
me
he
explain.
wants.
Let me explain. Let me explain. Kaisar bhai,
If you
there is a concept called genus and species. Look,
look,
Mustang is a horse, but not every horse is a Mustang. Okay, horse is an animal, but not every
Mhm.
animal is a horse.
Mhm.
Okay, so
So all of a sudden we
there
are
is a
using these
greater
examples.
circle, and then there is a smaller inner circle that is subsumed by the greater circle. Okay, so what he's saying is that according to the account laid down by you in response to the questions asked by Elias, okay, hudus zamani or temporal origination, okay, is subsumed by the greater category of malak-e ehtiyaj. So hudus zamani is just one kind of malak-e ehtiyaj, okay, according to you, the account that you laid down in response to the questions posed by Ilyas. So what is the other account, okay, that basically explains the continued dependence of the effect on the cause after the cessation of its temporal origination? This is what he's saying.
Well, but we have established that already, haven't we? Long ago. All I'm asking after that is that once we've established that once a thing has been caused, it has been affected, it's there, and certainly in the case of universe, yes, it has been
Kaisar
sustained
bhai.
by the cause. Please, hold on. Okay, we've established that. But
No,
now
we
to
haven't.
say
No, we
that
haven't. You
we
agreed.
did,
No,
20
let me
minutes ago, we
explain.
did.
Kaisar bhai, let me explain what we established. When you say that we have established that, what you're actually referring to is you agreed with us that there is continued dependence of the effect on the necessary existent, but you still haven't
Yes.
accounted for the criterion of that dependence. So this is what Ilyas is asking you. Okay, to account for the criterion. What is the criterion of this continued dependence?
He's asking me a question, and I understand what you were coming from, but he's asking me a very specific question, and that is whether the criterion of dependence is synonymous with hadith zamani, right? What I am saying is that this is a wrong framing of question, because you're implying within the question that if something is contingent on another thing, then they must be synonymous, which is not the case. You have to argue for it. You cannot simply make these rules without substantiating it and then base your questions on them.
But he's not saying that. Kaisar bhai, he's not
He's
saying that.
asking, look,
Oh my God.
if I say if
Elias.
I completely different way to explain, and hopefully it will make sense to you this time. If I say, for example, that if you leave your home and it starts raining, for example, then you are the reason it has started to rain, or the rain is contingent upon you. Therefore, there is no more difference between you and rain. Yes or no? You would say, well, hold on a minute. This question doesn't even make sense, because you're setting the rules that we haven't substantiated. There is no logic that actually supports it. There is no law of logic that supports it. And you are arbitrarily making these rules, and now you want me to answer that. And I will respect the fact that you are doing a mental exercise, helping me understand what is wrong with my question. And I'm doing the same favor to you, brothers. Again, ask me the question and allow me to ask a question on your question, and hopefully this time you will see the limitations of it. Go on, Ilyas.
Okay, okay, guys. Okay. For a thing which is contingent in itself,
Yeah.
i.e., it is mutasawiyun nisba bain al-wujud wal adam,
Hmm.
right? Equidistant from existence and non-existence.
Is it different from?
Malak, sorry,
Sorry, go on, please. I thought you asked me a question.
equidistant from existence, yeah, equidistant from existence and non-existence, right? Now, this thing is going to have malake ihtiyaj, the criterion of dependence, right?
Hmm.
Now, the criterion of dependence, let us just grant the fact that there is a thing which is temporally originated.
Okay.
There's no problem with
Sure.
that. Now, if a thing is temporally originated,
Yeah.
right, you can say the moment it comes into
Hmm.
existence, the malake ihtiyaj is hudus zamani, right?
No,
Okay, so what is the malake
which I
ihtiyaj?
have said about 50 minutes ago, that if you use the criterion with capital C and remove the Hadus Zamani, the criterion
Mm-hmm.
would be God Himself. You don't need to go to these arbitrary, artificial the essence
No,
of thoughts.
Kaisa bhai, God is the entity on which the effect depends, but it depends on
yeah.
God because of what? You need to fill in the blank. Because of what?
God is muhtaj, yeah, muhtaj ilayh. We are talking about ihtiyaj itself. All of us agree that God is muhtaj ilayh. We are asking about what is the mahiya of ihtiyaj, right? This is the question.
No,
So
this
obviously,
this isn't the
uh,
question. What you are saying is essentially that you have forced an arbitrary rule that requires God to use a medium and then make that the
no, we are
contingent
not
act of
talking about
God
any
upon
medium.
that, and you are not arguing for it. And I'm keep on asking you, and
Yeah,
No,
we have
no.
not
now
even
we've gone
Oh
to
talked
the
about
God.
our
stage. Now
cosmology.
we've gone to the stage where we're
Okay.
doing oh God and laughs and all that, but you are still the same scheme of the conversation is that you will keep on forcing rules in the conversations without
Brother
substantiating
Kesser,
it. I say
we
here
have
is the simple. Here is
dropped.
the option
Yeah,
A. Listen to me. Option A: God created universe. Option B: God needed a medium, which then becomes the criterion of dependence through which God created universe. Now there is an option A and
no,
option B. You're going with
that's not
option
what we
B.
are talking about.
You are absolutely,
That
because
is
if that is
that
No,
is
okay,
not
you're
no, no,
not.
no.
no,
We're not
If
saying
you're
that's
that.
not,
not true.
if you're
We're
not
not
talking
saying that.
about it, okay, you're not saying that. I accept that. Does it mean that God does not need any medium through which God will create the
That,
universe?
that,
Agree?
that's totally outside of the
It's not.
scope of
Just
the
answer the
No,
discussion right
question.
now.
what they
You
are,
What we are
know.
Kasser bhai,
You
what
know
they're
talking,
what we are
saying
saying.
is, what
You
they're
know what we
saying
are
is,
saying. Do you agree with this or do you not?
no, Kasser bhai, what they're saying is that you look at the universe, you say it's
Mhm.
dependent on God, but what makes you think it's dependent on God? What is the
That
criteria?
it's not God itself. Why do you need a criteria? If it is not God and it exists, it's created by God, unless you have a
When you
different view.
argue for the universe being a creation of God,
Yeah,
what's the argument you bring? Why is the universe a creation of God?
because universe is not God itself and it exists and it's a contingent being. If it is a contingent
Why is it?
being,
What
it
makes it
it
a
it
contingent
is
being?
exactly,
oh
But
exactly. This
you're
is
it
what we
is
are
Yes, this is
saying.
what
presupposing
they're
you're
saying. What's the
you
reasoning
presupposing
guys
it.
behind it
seriously
being a
have to
creation
up
of
your
God?
game.
This
Every
is what we are
time you
saying.
agree
We are
with me, you
saying
come up with,
for
oh, this is what we are saying. Well, if
yeah,
you are saying exactly
for
what I
But
am
what
this
saying,
is
makes what
all
makes
what
the
we are
but
universe
saying.
if you are
contingent? What
saying
makes it
exactly
contingent?
what I
How
am
do you know
saying
that?
and you keep on doing that, then why are we disagreeing with one
Yeah,
another?
yeah.
Why do you not
Because
give me
what
a
I will
makes
tell
step?
you
it
why we are disagreeing.
contingent? What makes the universe contingent? How do you know it's contingent? That's the question.
Right. I know the universe is contingent because it is not necessary. It's contingent because it was perfectly possible for it not to
Exactly.
exist. That's what makes it contingent.
Exactly. So this
Okay, so that you
a
agree with
beautiful
us.
answer.
Yeah, that's
But then
But
agreement.
still you
malake
disagree with me, Majid
exactly.
Rasul.
Then listen.
You sit me, you
You
sit with me
that
on
is
the bus, you
absolutely
take the
correct.
same route, but when you get to the destination, you say, oh no, but
No,
we have
no,
a different
actually it's the
destination.
opposite. We are going to lose you on this journey.
Yeah,
That's
you
what's going
jump
to
off
happen
the
in a few
bus. The
minutes.
problem is, Kaisar, is that you take the same bus as us and then you jump off the bus, whereas like we stay on the bus.
Well, but that probably the problem is because you have so
Yeah,
many
so
different rules as you go on the road, and you don't even explain why you have to have these rules and you want this bus to run on
no
those
no
rules.
problem. No
And
problem.
anyone who questions
Alhamdulillah.
those rules apparently becomes khair, okay, let's not go into whatever it becomes,
No
all the
problem.
things
We
you've said
will not
earlier.
go into that.
Again, we get to the point where we lost in the
Yeah,
conversation,
we get
that
to the
you
point.
say that
That's
the
fine.
universe is
We I
current.
think we have made great progress actually. So
I don't
now
know, where is
you
that
have agreed.
progress? Where is that
Yeah,
progress?
I'll tell
All
you
I'm
how.
asking you to explain your
We
question, and
Alhamdulillah,
so
now
far we are
both of us
struggling.
agree. Yeah, I'm taking it there. Now both of us agree that malaki ihtiyaj is actually the thing in itself being contingent, i.e., being equidistant from existence and non-existence. So now, since the very essence of being contingent is being equidistant from existence and non-existence, now temporal origination would only be an accident to a contingent reality, not an essential feature of the contingent reality, right?
Because
Because
contingency
for
is more
the
general than or temporal origination, which is more
Ahsan,
specific.
Mhm.
Exactly. Al-imkan a'am min hudus al-zamani. This
Okay.
is what we are saying.
So we'll say when you say that for example, milak, you believe that's a possibility. It's imkan, it's in its own nature, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And here is the problem. The consequence of the application of this notion of the universe not being created temporally is that imkan without a beginning is just a
No,
hold
brother, we are
on,
not
buddy,
talking
just hold
about
on, just
my
please,
dear brother.
please.
We are not.
That
We
is
have not
that
even
is
argued for the
we are
exist,
not discussing anything else.
brother.
Everything that we are saying is to get to that
Yeah.
point. We are taking that steps, and I'm just about
Yes, yes,
I'm just
exactly. So
about to
the
demonstrate. I'm
problem
just
is
about to
the
demonstrate, Elias, if you will.
yeah.
I'm just about to demonstrate the
Go ahead.
problem that you are going to face if you go with the idea of Milad being Imkan. And I'm not disagreeing with you on that. What I'm saying is that the logical extension of that would be that the Imkan without a beginning is just a permanent existence, which is another way of saying necessity. So how do you
But there
answer
is a
that?
beginning.
No,
Yeah,
exactly. Now,
there is
exactly.
a beginning.
This is where you went off
Okay,
the
now we're
bus
Kaisar
getting
bhai,
somewhere,
because
right?
you
Kaisar bhai,
this is yes,
Kaisar
yes.
bhai. First
This
of
is
all,
exactly
yeah,
the place where you just went off the
exactly.
bus
Kaisar
Okay, get me
bhai,
back on the bus.
because you
beginning.
yourself just
Get me back on the
agreed that
bus.
malak
Look,
ihtiyaj
look. We
yeah,
have
because you
this,
yourself agreed.
brothers.
Yeah,
Look, we have
yes,
this
yes, yes.
long
Because
old tradition of Qawwali, where one person feeds, another person takes the Qawwali poetry to something else. I mean, by all means, I would love to
yeah,
listen to
yeah,
Rag
yeah.
Darbari to you both
So,
brothers,
so
but right now
yeah,
because
yeah.
we're
So
having
I
a
think
serious
now we
discussion,
have reached the
hold on.
exact
Because we're
yeah,
having a
yeah. We
serious
have reached the
discussion, what we
beautiful
can't do is if when we make
beautiful
a progress,
point.
one brother starts talking over me, other starts laughing. It
Oh,
is
no, no
very
problem, bro.
unbecoming
No
of
problem.
serious thinkers and philosophers. I
Brother
mean, this is
Kasser, we have made great
okay.
progress, and
We
now
are
I
at that
think we have
point.
reached that point.
Let's
So let me
carry
just
on with
point
that
out.
progress, then shall we?
Yeah, yeah,
So I repeat,
exactly. So
Imkan
now
without a beginning is
you,
just a
yeah,
permanent existence, right? And that is another way of saying
exactly.
it's
So
necessary.
now,
Okay.
exactly. So now the problem is that you just
Mhm.
posited that the malake ihtiyaj is imkane dhati. And the definition of imkane dhati is being mutasawiyun nisba bain al wujud wal adam, right? So now you cannot deduce from adme huduse zamani that something is necessary, because for something to be necessary, the definition of necessity is admul imkan, right? And you cannot posit that just because something has adme huduse zamani, that it also has adme imkan, because for a thing to have adme imkan, it doesn't mean that it needs to have adme hudus zamani. No, no.
Exactly.
What it means to have adme imkan, it means that it needs to be it needs to be the adam of it being mutasawiyun nisba bain al wujud wal adam. That is the problem. You are positing that it is the lazima of adme huduse zamani that something has adme imkan, but there is no evidence for that.
It's like
So this is where you get off
the
the
And it
bus.
doesn't
negation.
work
Let's
the other way
talk.
either.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
So
work
then
the
It's
other
let's
like
talk
way.
about
it's like
for something
it's
that we
like
do
listen,
have.
Kasabai, let me illustrate this with an example. It's like the negation of humanity does not necessarily preclude animality, which is the genus. I mean, just because
Okay.
something is not a human being, that doesn't
Yeah.
mean that it cannot be an animal. It could still very well be an animal without being a human being. So you see, because one idea is more specific, the other is more general. So the negation of hudus zamani does not necessarily preclude essential contingency. This is what Ilyas and I'm trying to explain to you.
Okay. Instead of going these needless examples, let's get straight to the topic that we were talking about. You hold
No, no, they're
that
not
Milad.
needless. No,
Oh,
no, no, no,
goodness
no,
me.
no,
Okay.
no, no.
Okay.
They're not
Let's.
needless.
All right.
What you need to explain? What is the
They are
malake
worth.
ihtiyaj? Let us come
All
back to
right.
that.
Let
What
me
is malake
concede.
ihtiyaj?
Hasnan, let me concede. They are not needless. They are worth Oscars. Brilliant. Let's get back to the point. Do you believe that the milak is possibility, is imkan?
Are you asking me or Ilyas?
I have range, don't I?
No, it's okay.
Oh,
I
that's
mean, I
not a
can
simple
address a
question. I
question.
mean, please do.
Okay, simple answer. Qaisar bhai, malak-e-ihtiyaj is a criterion of dependence. Malak-e-ihtiyaj itself is not essential contingency. So it's a criterion of dependence for the theologians is hudus-e-zamani. Okay, but the problem is that after the cessation of temporal origination, is the effect
No, we are
dependent
going too far.
on the
We're
necessary
not.
or not? No,
We're
no,
not
we're
going
not
into
going
that
too
far. I'm
far.
just asking a
So,
very simple
we have
question.
established, or listen to
Do
me.
you
Don't
believe that
interrupt, please.
milak
Please don't.
itself is
Kaisar
imkan
bhai,
or not? It's a
Kaisar
very simple
bhai,
question.
I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that. Okay,
Please go.
so the effect is either dependent or it is not. If it is not dependent, then that implies a plurality of necessary beings. If it is dependent, so then what is the malak-e-ihtiyaj now? What is it? You need to fill the blank. I mean, the
All right.
effect is still dependent upon the necessary because of what? Now, this malak cannot be temporal origination because temporal origination has already ceased. It's
Okay,
been
now that
1,000 years, 10,000 years, or let's say 100 years. So what is a malak-e-ihtiyaj now?
now let's now that we've gone past this nice little deflection, let me get back to my question. Do you believe milak is imkan or not?
No, you need to answer the question.
I asked you a question. You asked me who should answer. I said either. Now
I
you
did. I
now
already
you cannot
explained.
start with the question.
This
No, you
was,
didn't.
I already, I did.
It's a simple
You,
yes or no question. Is it
you weren't
imkan?
able
Yes or
to,
no?
you weren't able to understand it.
Please try me.
This is precisely what I'm saying. That I just explained to you, it cannot
You
be
didn't.
hudus. Why?
You
Because I did.
avoided the question completely and you
No,
went
I'm
to something
answering
else.
it. Are,
I'm
Kaisar
only
bhai,
asking.
listen to me.
Listen.
I'm explaining. It cannot.
Try to
Okay, this is the
fathom.
answer. This is the answer. This is the
Try to
answer.
fathom.
This is the
Do you
answer.
even?
This is the
All
answer.
right.
This is the
Steelman
answer.
my
This is the
question,
answer.
please.
Listen to me.
Steelman
Listen to
my
me. This is
question. I want to
no,
make
no.
sure that you
I
understand
would
it first.
address. I would address the question the
Please,
way I
Steelman
see
my
fit.
question first.
This is the answer.
Do you mind Steelmaning my
Kaisar
question
bhai,
so that I know that you understand it?
okay. I think you want to speak over me. So okay, fine. But I'm going to address the
All I'm
question the way
asking
I
is
see
to
fit.
Steelman my question. I want to know if you understand it. Please Steelman it.
I already did. You weren't paying attention.
You didn't
The
Steelman it. It's the
criterion.
first time I'm asking
Look,
for
you're
it.
not
Please
letting me
Steelman
speak.
it.
You're not letting me speak, Kasabai. So
What I'm
this
asking is, we want to
basically.
make sure that we have the constructive use of time here, so you don't go into all astray topics again. Steelman
Okay,
my question before you
let me
answer it,
respond
please.
to it. Let me respond to it.
You're not going to tell me if you
Okay,
understood my question correctly?
you're saying you asked me, is the malak imkan or not?
Yes, please answer this.
So Kaisar bhai, I mean, why are you? I mean, please don't
Just get
pretend
to
that
the
you're
answer, will
asking
you?
something
Again,
that
just
is going to go
stop
over my
coming
head.
into, stop
Okay,
going
so
astray. Get to
please
the
don't do
answer.
that. Okay, I mean, like
Get to the
I
answer,
already
will you?
did. You
It's
need to
no
open up
point.
your mind. Okay, you're
Just
too
get to the
slow.
answer.
Okay, try to understand what I'm saying. I already
Please
explained
go
the
answer the question,
criterion of.
Hasnain.
Okay, are you? When did you come into existence? When did you
Gentlemen,
temporarily
It's a
just calm
simple
originate?
down.
question.
We
And you
don't
will
want
do
it
your
to
best
turn
to avoid this
polemical. You
question.
just
You know
calm down. Take
why.
a breath.
So I'm going to
Take a
take the
No,
deep breath.
why
question.
would I?
Allahumma salli ala
Allahumma
Muhammad wa ala
Allahumma
ali.
salli ala Muhammad.
Just take a deep breath.
Bale.
Right,
जी जी
gentlemen,
बोलें कैसर भाई
I
फिर आप
think
हसनैन भाई को बोलें.
it is very clear, Hasnain Bhai, that we're not going to conclude on a point today. So what I'm going to do is, since there isn't much time left before our Fajr concludes, I'm in Pakistan, I'm not sure where you are. I'm going to leave you with an argument, and next time we will start from here. Okay?
No, Kaisar bhai, we have left you with an argument. You need to respond to the question. What is the
It's
malak-e-ihtiyaj after the establishment of hudus? After the cessation of hudus, what is the malak-e-ihtiyaj? This is the
do you
question that you
mind?
have been evading to answer. It's been 3 hours. And
No,
both
it's
Ilyas and
not.
I have,
It's. Do you
it
realize
has
that it's been
been.
recorded? Do you realize that?
It's been, I mean, at least a couple of hours that we have been trying, endeavoring to explain this simple philosophical point to you.
No, you're not. What you're doing, what you've
Yes,
done
we
is so
are.
far.
Yes, we
Listen,
are.
what you've done so far is you have made a point that the universe owes its current continued existence to a necessary being. Yes, agreed. And after that, you try to make the case of synonymity of the Milaki Ehtiyaj and Hadus Zamani. I asked, how did we get
No,
there?
we
So
didn't.
far, we
Oh
have
my
no answer.
God.
It's
This is
been
not what Ilyas
recorded.
was saying.
Hasnain, okay,
This is
let's leave it there.
Ilyas.
It's been recorded.
Ilyas, were you saying that?
Hasnain,
Is this what you
Hasnain.
said?
It's been recorded. People can listen to it. There's no point of something that has been
I
said.
was saying the
We
complete opposite of
all
that,
right. Okay.
actually.
Exactly.
Look,
I was
guys,
saying
Okay.
guys,
It's been
Malaki
recorded,
Ihtiyaj
you're going
is
in, you're
not
going in
identical
circles.
to him.
So,
gentlemen.
Kaisar, the
It's
point is
been
very simple.
recorded,
They are
sir. I
saying,
Okay, Khalil, you
but,
can
all I'm
but,
try,
looking to
no
do
problem.
is all I'm looking to do
Kaisar, let's
is
return to the topic. Let's
Dr.
return to the
Adani.
topic.
Dr. Adani. All I'm doing is I want to leave you guys with an argument. Next time we'll start from here. I think it's a very fair proposition. There is no need to any kind of, that passive hostility that my brother is offering. Can I do that?
You can, but
Thank you.
we'll
Okay, here is the
respond to
thing.
get back to the topic.
All right. Milak is imkan. So this is the structure of my argument. So when we say milak e ihtiyaj, well, milak in its own nature is a possibility, is not an absolute necessity. Now, imkan, problem with this is that imkan without a beginning, it's just a permanent existence because it is not an imkan, it's there always. And that is another way of saying that it is necessary. My brothers believe that the universe is eternally dependent. That's fair enough. I agree with that too. Now, the problem with that is that an eternal effect would require no active creation, and that makes God a passive source rather than a willing creator because the universe has to emanate from God without the irada. And that is the problem with this argument because that we have no other way of understanding it except from this that the god creates automatically because we've already established that imkan is a possibility and any other view from that, if we depart from that, that tells us that the God will create automatically because of the permanent nature of existence, which would be the case if imkan is not a possibility. And if creation is automatic, then there is no irada of God. Then all we're saying is that we're applying a logically impossible position on a perfect being by reducing him to a being that has to manifest without the irada or free will to create the universe. This is where I stop. That is the
Okay.
argument.
Let me,
Okay,
yeah,
but to be
Then I
fair,
have to
what
do
you
my
did
amazing.
fajr. I don't
was
have
you
much time.
shifted
Sir, I'm sure.
the topic.
No,
You
we
shifted the
didn't.
topic. So,
Oh no, sir.
oh, but
Before,
let
This is
before you
Dr.
go,
Adani.
Ilyas can comment. Hold on.
yeah,
From
Ilyas
our
can comment
second.
on the imkan part. But I want to say one thing about what you did. So you raised an implication that God doesn't have free will to create. So I would simply say this: in your own belief, you believe that God's knowledge is comprehensive and includes what God will do. Okay,
yeah, even Imam Ghazali
God
says
has
that.
foreknowledge of what God is going to do. So,
Mhm.
therefore, you reach the same position as us because God's knowledge is eternal. It doesn't change, it cannot be modified in any way. So, God
Mhm.
already knows what he's going to will before he wills it and before he does it. So, therefore, if it is the fact that God created the universe, and it began in time. God eternally knew that he was going to create the universe. So he actually didn't have free will to change whether he was going to do that. So even your belief is going to end up in the very position that you're criticizing of us. And that's just at
It
the
wouldn't actually.
implication level.
Dr. Adani, it wouldn't
It
because
would. Can
what you're
God's
saying,
foreknowledge change?
well, what
Okay,
you're saying is that
before we
you're
talk about
reducing
whether it
God's
would or not,
foreknowledge to the imposition of God. I mean, if you believe God's foreknowledge is
Can
imposed
God
on
will
God,
against his own foreknowledge? So God has
this
foreknowledge
space
that
is
God is
going
going to
to
create.
crash.
So how
I've
can God
Yeah,
will anything
Khalid,
other than his foreknowledge? It's the
this
well, you
same.
space
have to
is
make a
about to
claim.
crash. So
It's very
To be able
simple.
to make
God
before
that
has
that
point.
happens,
foreknowledge.
Kaisar Bhai,
God has foreknowledge that God was going to.
just a
Okay.
minute, man. Just everyone, man. Let me just point out the issue in your reasoning, Kaisar Bhai. Then because I think the space might very well crash very soon. The problem with your argumentation is that you yourself agreed at the very beginning that malake ihtiyaj is imkan, right? But then after that you say that, oh, just because something does not have hudus zamani, that would entail its necessity. But that does not follow.
I didn't say
Because
that.
if malake
Sir.
ihtiyaj, just let me finish, please.
Okay.
Please let me finish. Because what is imkan? Imkan is, oh sorry, what is wujub? Wujub is going to be the adam of ihtiyaj, right? This is what wujub is going to be. So now, if you are positing that adme hudus zamani is is wujub, then you need to bring an actual positive argument for it, because you have already accepted that malak ihtiyaj is imkan,
Mhm.
and the wujub would be adme imkan. So now the if the wujub is adme imkan, and imkan and hudus zamani are not identical, then it does not matter whether a thing has hudus zamani or not. What matters for the necessitation of its wujub is not adme hudus zamani. What matters is adme kaune mutasawiyun nisba bain al wujud wal adam. This is what would necessitate its necessity. The necessitation of necessity is not through the non-existence of temporal incipience. It is through the non-existence of equidistance between existence and non-existence. This is the main point. This is where you get off the bus. Because at first you agree that malaki ihtiyaj is the equidistance between existence and non-existence, but then you try to claim that the lack of temporal origination necessarily entails a lack of equidistance between existence and non-existence. But there is no argument for that.
That's why I didn't make that argument. Gentlemen, I hope you understand that namaz is far more important and we don't have much time for it. But I would like to repeat the argument because I feel you mischaracterized it. When I say that milak is imkan and you didn't counter that, which seems to suggest that you also agree with it. Now, the implication of that is that the imkan without a beginning is permanent. And that is, like I said earlier, it's another way of saying that it is necessary. Now, if you are placing another necessary being next to God, then we are questioning the Tawheed.
So, Kaisar bhai, that
Just,
is what we are asking evidence for.
just
What's the evidence for that? That permanent imkan entails necessity. What is the argument for that?
because if it is permanent, which means permanent means always there. And like us, the important point that you're missing here is that imkan without a beginning. If there is a beginning of it, I have no problem with it. You want to call it.
No, no, there is a beginning. The beginning is hudus zati,
Okay, then.
which is the same beginning as the one I have right now, where God is not creating me temporally,
Yeah.
but God is sustaining my existence. So there is hudus zati even right
Did,
now, that which I am experiencing and everything else is
did you
experiencing.
just say God is not creating you temporally?
No, is God creating me temporally right now?
What?
God is sustaining me in the now. This is hudus zati.
Why? I
Right
get it.
now, I am being created by
I
God.
get that point,
So
but
this is
but I'm,
hudus
I'm I'm
zati.
glad the fact that
Yes.
at least we have agreement on the beginning side. Now there's the nature of a beginning that we are discussing, right? So when you say,
No, 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 no. What we are
I
positing, you
literally
are
agreed with
positing
you.
that eternal, being
Yeah.
eternal entails wujub. We are asking what is the argument for that? How does being eternal entail wujub?
Well, because
What entails wujub is
the evidence
admun,
lies in law of
being mutasawiyun
non-contradiction.
nisba bain al wujud wal adam.
Sir, evidence lies in law of non-contradiction. I mean, you cannot simply say that something
Yeah, what is the
which is
contradiction? This is precisely what we are asking you. What is the contradiction? What is
But
the P and
something
non-P?
being
would you
permanent doesn't make it necessary. Something being permanent, it's why it's permanent. Is it permanent because of itself, or is it permanent because something else causes it to be? So your premise, Kaiser, that that which is permanent is necessary in itself is incorrect and unproven.
well this
Yeah,
this
by the way,
Dr.
this is
Adani,
not even denied by
unfortunately,
the literalists. Even, for example, for Ibn
guys, I
Taymiyyah,
mean,
the
you can,
no
by
ul
all means,
khalq
you can
is eternal.
look. I mean, if the scheme is that one of you is going to strawman me, another one is going to respond to that, by all means, talk to each other. I
No,
mean,
no,
that's no
no,
problem.
Kaisa Bhai, I was just telling
Ah,
you
okay,
that even for the literalists,
okay,
even for someone like Ibn Taymiyyah,
yeah,
the ul khalq is eternal. So this is not even just a philosophical
okay.
position.
Allow
Even the
me,
Atharis, the Taymi
sure.
Atharis hold this
Well,
position.
allow me to correct Dr. Adani on this because
So
he
sorry, where did
literally
I
strawman
strawman
me.
you?
Yeah.
I heard you say three
I'm
times that
literally,
that which is
I'm literally about
permanent
to,
is
I'm literally
necessary.
about to say that. Do you mind, sir? The straw
No,
man
please
is
go
that you
ahead.
have omitted the beginning part. I've repeatedly said that imkan without a beginning is just permanent, whereas you are mischaracterizing it by saying that imkan is permanent.
There is a
If there is
No,
beginning.
no
no,
The
no, no,
beginning
no.
is
beginning,
That's
not
not what I
temporal.
said.
It
That's
is
not what I
causal.
said,
that's a
though.
No,
different.
Khalil,
That's a different
there is a
matter.
beginning. There is a
That is
beginning.
that's a
It's not
different matter.
temporal.
But
It is
that
causal.
is a different
Okay,
matter
the
whether it's
first
causal or
effect,
temporal.
listen to me. The
Hasnan,
first
that's a
effect has a
different argument
principle. It
altogether.
has a
I'm only
mabda.
explaining
So
how
don't
Dr.
say there is
Adani
no
has
beginning.
mischaracterized my. But
No, you
look,
are
this is a different
mischaracterizing
argument.
it. You are
Hasnan, you're
mischaracterizing
confused. This
it.
is so disappointing.
Look, the
This
thing
is
is
so
you're arguing for
disappointing.
essential
Do you mind? Do you
necessity,
mind if I
but
can
you're not
quickly?
taking
Do you
into
mind if I can
account
quickly respond to
necessity
Dr.
through
Adani?
another.
Guys, you really have to do better than this. Last time we had the same thing. I mean, we are literally just snatching something out of thin air and running in different directions, and that's why we had that rather unpleasant ending. And it doesn't have. If you are grounded in your arguments, you do not have to do this, Dr. Adani. You omitted the wording of without a beginning. This is how you strawman it, sir. On this note, I have to take leave. Like I said, Fajr has very limited time left in it. As something I have to do. I'm in Pakistan. I'm not sure where you guys are. Pleasure talking to you all. It's always good to talk about things that we can never
Amazing.
agree
Yeah.
on. But at
And by
least
the way,
it's
Thank you
constructive
much. It
time.
was
Kaisa bhai, when you say that
Aslan, we can't
God
go
doesn't
on
have
like
free will
this.
in the account of the philosophers, so that is wrong.
Aslan,
You're arguing for a
Aslan, Aslan,
libertarian free will. That implies
for
essential possibility within
goodness,
the divine essence. As I said earlier, God
Aslan,
cannot have
goodness
the
sakes,
ability
man.
to act
Aslan,
otherwise.
what do you
Because if you
want?
were to posit the ability to act otherwise for the
Aslan,
divine, that basically implies dependence. Because that
Aslan, what do
essential
you want?
possibility would need to be necessitated by an
Aslan,
external cause. So this conception of free
what?
will applies to human beings that are agents by intention, fa'al bil qasd. It cannot apply to the divine.
Hasnain, I have to go for Fajr. I'm not sure what ego you have to satisfy at this stage, but we can talk about it later.
I
Can
was
we?
simply correcting you. Okay,
Can we?
fine. It's okay. Jazakallah for your presence and
Thank
for
you.
your time.
Thank you. Brothers, salam to all. We'll talk
yeah,
next
yeah.
time,
It
inshallah.
was very
Wa
nice
alaikum
No,
having
it
salam.
was
you.
very
It's a
nice. I'm
pleasure.
Keep
glad. I'm
coming.
so glad you came. You come back anytime.